Good evening and welcome to the March 22nd, 2021 Planning Board meeting. If we could first please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance.
Flag to the flag.
The United
States
States
of America, and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If I could please ask everybody to please keep your mics on mute and your cameras off until your item is on the agenda. We're going to start off first with correspondence. Anybody have anything they want to talk about in the correspondence? Robin, you did ask us to talk about
the one sign, yes.
the pizza sign. So we got a late-breaking piece of information today about the pizza place.
Did you say pizza information? I'm sorry.
That's it. The rest of the meeting's downhill. They want to change the face of the sign out and leave the box in place. They're
Right.
next to, in the BJ's shopping center, next to Dunkin' Donuts. I don't know if you've all had the chance to take a look at that.
So the master sign plan states that if an existing tenant moves, they can move their sign with them, but that if a new tenant comes, they need to get a new sign so that we could remove the box signs over time. This, obviously, they already figured that they would be just replacing the face of the box sign, so I'm bringing it to you to see what you want to do.
But the intent of the code and the change was to remove the box signs.
Right.
So this is an opportunity to comply with the intent of the code. But this applicant just wants to, or the tenant just wants to remove the face and put a new face in place. So what do you guys think?
I didn't have a chance to go look at it, but
It's this one.
Yep.
It's what's there now,
mhm.
and this is what they planned to replace it with. This is on the side, and there's one on the other side.
Well, if it's an existing sign, I would have no objection just to change the face. Every one of my tenants have done that over the years. The box stays the same, they change the face. As long as the letterings, comply with the code.
The town wants to get rid of these types of signs, is that it?
I think
Yes.
For what purpose? What would be the purpose? Wouldn't it be discriminatory against the new tenants with the old guys being able to grandfather in? Just want to play the devil's advocate.
Well, the master sign plan requires that all new signs use channel letters. And so that's what we've been doing on the main building. These signs on this building have not been replaced during that time period. So
I don't know. My personal opinion, I would have no objection.
what do we have? 3 tenants in that building? Baskin Robbins, the pizza place,
and Dunkin'.
Dunkin' Donuts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dunkin' Donuts is not going to change anytime soon. Baskin Robbins is not going to change anytime soon.
Right.
Maybe we can entertain or put something in the record that says we will allow this temporarily until one or more of the other tenants change.
There you go.
Because, if one of the other tenants changes and this is a temporary thing, then at least we'd have 2/3 of the building with the new type of signage. And as soon as the third tenant changes, I think I kind of agree with Bill in the sense that you just have one tenant now on the end with the new type of sign and the other 2 remain the same. And I think for the sake of the building looking somewhat consistent, I would be in favor of approving it as a temporary measure until at least one of the other tenants changes.
Good idea. And also, you gotta think about Popeyes. Popeyes hasn't got any channel letters. They got a box sign. And they
Correct, but I think just for consistency on this standalone building, if you will, that it would make sense for us to bend a little bit for as a temporary measure.
I think Popeyes is considered a logo.
Right.
Robin, does this go to Abaca?
Not if there's a master sign plan, as long as it complies, the building inspector can approve it on his own.
Right, and it looks, obviously, keeping the same square footage and everything, it would comply in every other fashion, I imagine, right?
Yeah, it's pull out, pull in, push in, it looks like. Rob or Aaron, you got any concerns, comments?
No, I don't. I support the objectives that John and Bill have laid out.
Do we
Yeah,
want
and
them
I
to
think
keep
we
the
should be
snow on the
specific.
bottom? What about the snow?
Get rid of the snow.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
All right, Robin, so
Okay.
they can proceed.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anything else in the correspondence?
No.
Okay, meeting minutes of March 8th, 2021. I know John has already submitted his comments. Does anybody else have any?
Not here.
Everybody's good?
All
All right,
good.
then.
Great.
Do we have a motion approving the meeting minutes of March 8th, 2021?
So moved.
Second.
First by Kinkard. I think the second was by Bill. All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, then we'll move into the regular session portion of our meeting. We have 3 items in the regular session, and then we have quite a few in the work session. So first on the regular session is the Hammock Hills Farm Solar. This is a public hearing and a special use permit. Location is 500 Croton Avenue in Cortland Manor. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion.
Second.
First by Bach, second by Garanon. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Margaret, you're on.
Good evening. We are here to discuss the Hemlock Hills Solar Farm, which is at 500 Croton Avenue. The access is from the town of Cortland. The solar farm itself is approximately 4 acres in size over the 180 acres of the parcel. It isn't visible from Croton Avenue or the other roads. We did a site walk through the adjacent property that has some trails on it, and although you could sporadically see a couple of the balloons, it really is a dappled view, and when there's full cover, full leaf cover, I don't believe that you will see it at all. There was a question because there's a conservation easement on the site that the county had to sign off on the new location, and we did receive that letter from the county. They had a couple of comments about the SWIP and our seed mix. One of the comments that they had was about we are proposing these small infiltration trenches at the drip line wherever the slope goes over 10%, and they actually are recommending that we not put those in. They think that that's a disturbance that's not necessary. From our point of view, we would be happy not to have to put them in either, but it was a concern of the DEP that the drip line was on a slope and that could cause concentrated flows. we will not be increasing the runoff off the site, whether or not we put the infiltration trenches in or don't. We could possibly put a caveat that we would not put the infiltration trenches in, and that if there were, you know, a noticeable erosion, that we could go back and put the infiltration trenches in.
Margaret, why don't you put up your screen so we can see, because we can't see anything.
How come I can't find it? Here we go. So these are the solar arrays. The green line is where we are proposing these small infiltration trenches, which I do have the detail for. It's the little small trench, basically a foot deep and a foot wide, or 2 feet wide and a foot deep. Put gravel in it. You would again put soil and grass, but it is a disturbance. You know, I guess it depends on, you know, I'm getting conflicting comments. You know, the DEP is worried about concentrated flow, but Westchester County is not. So from our point of view, we prefer not to put them in, but we can go either way.
Could I ask, are these trenches interconnected and to a central thing to bring it to daylight?
No, they here, let me go back to the plan. So the top part of the site is very gently sloping, and then as you go down a little bit, it starts to increase its slope. It's still a very gentle slope. There is a whole other field here. Westchester County's comment was they would have preferred if we had the array along the contours, but we have to point it to the south. So, you know, if you pick one site, we've got like 99% of the best things that you could have for the solar site, and we have this one thing that the contours are not going in the direction that we want. So we have to run the array across the contours, as the preferred is to run them with the contours. So as a compromise, we put in these little infiltration trenches so that as the water, you know, during a storm event, if the water runs off of the array, that if it's running on a hillside, it won't, you know, concentrate so much that it could cause, you know, riveting. Although I don't think that would happen anyway, because, you know, I mean, this has been an open field for many years. The water runs across and tends to find its way where it's going. There is wetland down below. There's wetland again once you get off of the property. I don't feel strongly one way or the other that these are required, or that they will help all that, you know, that they will provide something that you know, one is it's a temporary disturbance. So we go in and we dig the trench and we put down the stone. It's a temporary disturbance. It's not, you know, it's not a permanent disturbance. Like, we're not putting down concrete. We're still just going to dig cracks. I think from Westchester County's point, from Westchester County's point of view, they're looking at the overall viability of the farmland, because this is under the farmland conservation easement, and these soils are considered prime farmland in New York State, and they would prefer to have little to no disturbance in them, which the installation of the solar farm is little to no disturbance. So they are saying they don't think that these trenches are providing enough mitigation to warrant the disturbance.
If I could, I see Dan CRC is on. Dan, you have any feelings one way or the other? Dan is the acting town engineer, one of them.
Well, not to muddy the waters, but I have yet another opinion about all this.
No pun intended.
Yeah, I mean, I come to the same conclusion. I mean, the way these infiltration trenches are proposed right now, they will concentrate the water, and they really won't function as infiltration trenches unless you break them into cells, because there's too much slope across the area.
Right.
But yeah. I think the premise that there's no increase in runoff is really not a valid one, because what's going to happen is, even though you leave the ground alone, you still end up with a situation where water won't be landing on the soil underneath the arrays. So you're not getting the benefit of that initial abstraction of the water percolating into that soil, that soil is going to be dry. So, and also the character of the land is going to change. I mean, when you figure runoff, the amount of runoff, depending upon even the condition of the grass, varies. So I think there needs to be some level of stormwater mitigation, but the way it's proposed right now, I don't think achieves that goal. Perhaps you could do infiltration trenches running perpendicular to the arrays, and then size them accordingly, and now they would also serve as level spreaders as well. But with this perpendicular to the contours arrangement, I think it provides little benefit.
Right, so they were just installed to slow down
right,
the drip off of the edge.
That the way it's shown right now is going to speed it up. You're going to concentrate flows and create erosion at the end of these things.
Right, it'll start to blow out down at the end.
Right.
There is a stone wall there, but
because they're truly not level spreaders, because they're running perpendicular to the contour, so you can't even call it that.
No.
But you've got topsoil on top, so not all the water is going to percolate in, and then the water that does percolate in is going to, you probably have like 10 feet across some of these. So the water is just going to come into the stone and very rapidly flow to the low end and want to come out at the low end. So you're really not truly having the whole area of the system available for percolation.
So we could switch them and put like one here halfway through and one at the end, so that any runoff would be captured and slowed down.
I mean, I think that there's some wisdom to putting something, for the drip off of the arrays, but there's enough going on here that there should be some analysis of what's required. A proper SWIP should be done for this to tabulate what's needed to mitigate the impact.
So we did prepare a SWIP, and we followed the guidelines of the New York State DEC for cover characteristics for our solar farm, which is basically, it doesn't change the cover characteristics as long as you aren't putting anything below them, which these are direct bore into the ground. So there's no pad, they're not sitting on a pad.
It would seem to me that these arrays are at an angle. They're not parallel to the ground. They're at an angle to the ground. So the water is going to sheet off. It would seem to me that the area with the highest risk of any kind of concentration of flow would be down towards the bottom.
Right.
And so maybe it's some sort of French drain type of solution that addresses, the bottom fifth or or bottom third of the arrays.
Or
Right.
two of them, halfway through the array and then down near the stone wall at the end of the array, and one on each side of the stream. So 4 altogether, acting like some sort of level lip spreader.
I don't think you need them on the stream. The thing is this, it's there. Although we did not dig a test hole, the soil from the soil survey indicates that there's a high water table. So it's not like I want to build a big infiltration trench that's deep and gonna hold a lot of volume. These were really just to slow down some water. So if we put something very shallow again here, then anything that's running along could be captured into the stone. Let me go back to the detail. Sorry. If we put just a little bit of a swale in it, so that any runoff, which would be coming down the hill, could be slowed down and go into the stone and basically, maybe even itself out along.
But it would have to be perpendicular to the hill.
Yeah, so rather than run them along the drip line, we can run one through the middle and one at the end.
Correct. That's what I was That's what I was suggesting. If that would be
similar to where the silt fence is shown.
Dan, what do you think of that?
Well, I mean, I'm just kind of getting involved with this now. So, I mean, I'd like to see, some numbers and, we'll work with the applicant on some sort of strategy that obviously it's not just us. We have other agencies weighing in on this, but to try and come to some consensus as to what the best solution is for this particular arrangement.
Right, so we're gonna have to have the engineers talk about this offline, if that's okay with everyone.
Like about me.
Well, is this something that needs to come back before the board, or can this be a condition that, is satisfied as a condition?
I think Jim's weighing in.
Yeah, I would say that in order to make the secret findings you're going to have to make, you'll need to have a drainage plan in front of you that you can approve.
Okay.
Okay, Margaret, do you have anything else in your presentation?
I don't believe so. So those were the comments. I think there was another comment about the seed mix, but we'll follow whatever it says by the manufacturer.
Okay. And John and Jim, the county letter, are we square with that end of it?
I'm fine with the county letter.
John?
I have no issues, and I think anything that comes up, we'll be working with Dan along with Margaret, so we can address anything that comes up pursuant to the letter. So,
okay. All right. Any more comments from the board?
No.
No.
All right. This is a public hearing, so we will open it up to the public. If you have anything to ask, I think Robin's got the information up there. You can raise your hand, or there's a dial-in button. give you a minute. See anybody, Robin?
I'm not sure. I unmuted myself, but I don't know how to raise my hand, so I have to apologize.
That's okay. You're Mr. Stern?
Yes, good evening.
How are you? Have a question?
I'm well. How are you all?
Good, thank you.
You know, my concern is a little fundamental. On the last meeting, that work session you had, I understand we weren't allowed to comment. I live on Croton Avenue, and quite frankly, the farmers, you know, neighbors of ours, and we know them forever, and we want them to, you know, be able to be solvent so they don't do other things that maybe change the nature of the area and stuff. But I had one concern from the last meeting, and I think, Mr. Fawn, I think you went with somebody from the Westchester Land Trust. But my understanding was the site visit you did was for a different site, and that it was since changed. This is a second site or a different.
No. So the applicant had put up some balloons, myself, Robin, thank God for Walt Daniels taking us through the woods in the snow. It was about a foot deep. And I think his name was Brendan from the neighboring property. And we walked up to the rear wall. We looked at the site from the path and actually off the path. And we meandered up and down the wall to see if there was any visual impact. And then we had a separate site visit with other members of the board actually on the farm. So there were two separate site visits. One was the original to look at the site itself, the farm. The second was from the neighboring trails to see if there was any visual impact. So there are two separate site visits, and I don't believe, to my knowledge, this application has ever changed the location. Unless I'm mistaken, Robin.
No, I think the confusion was that at some point before they made the application, they had it in a different place before they came to us. So it was the county that thought it moved, but we never saw it move.
Okay, so I misunderstood that from the meeting, and I apologize.
No problem.
This is where it's been the whole time, pretty much.
Well, I can clarify that. The applicant had sent a preliminary plan to the county that showed the array farther to the south on the farm, and then subsequently, before they came before the board, they switched to this location, and that was at the request of the farm and the solar people. They made that decision together, and then we had to go back to the county to get the letter updated.
I understand. Okay, so then that's where you folks had your site visits at the current location.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure of that because I just wanted to make sure that the balloons and stuff weren't, that's what I got was that, and I misunderstood, so I apologize. And
Okay.
also, in general, a solar farm is a permitted use under this this easement?
Yes. It is a permitted use. It's specifically stated in the agreement between the farm and Westchester County that a solar farm is a desirable additive to the farm. But there is a condition that the county has to give written approval that the solar farm could be installed, and that we did obtain from the county.
I understand, and that's in that agreement, that lease, that easement's like 38 pages long. That's in there somewhere.
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for permitting me to talk, and hopefully, this works out and doesn't. It looks like from I think we had an engineer look at it too, and I'm not sure. I think you responded to some stuff, Mrs. or Miss McManus. And it seems like for at least us on Croton Avenue, it's not going to affect us too much. So
yes, it's over the hump. I provided, I guess there was a spokesman for some people, and I provided them with some information and screenshots from Google Earth.
Right, okay. Well, thank you very much and good luck with the project.
Thank you.
Mr. Stern.
Okay, thank you
Good
very
night.
much. Folks.
Be safe.
And you as well, all of you. Thanks for your very conscientious effort. I listened to a couple of these meetings and didn't realize how much effort and work goes into this. So thank you all very much and be safe.
You're very welcome. Thanks for the kind words. You see anybody else, Robin?
No.
We did have a bunch of emails that came back earlier in February. That'll be part of the record. A lot of them talked about construction, trucks, noise, disruption, drainage, which we talked about. Again, a lot of people worry about construction, vehicles. All right, we have nobody else from the audience. John, anything on your end?
No, we're fine.
Jim,
Nothing from me.
any more comments from the board?
None.
Okay, so what's the wish of the board? You want to close the hearing and leave it open for written comment?
Yeah, motion to close?
We have a motion from Mr. LaScala. Is there a second?
10 days?
10 days written?
Good. Second.
Second from Mr. Kinkart. All is in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you. So I should contact Dan Ciarcia about the SWIP and any changes?
What I would suggest is you, probably via Zoom, is set up a meeting with, we say all the professionals. So John and Robin, Mr. Ciarcia, maybe even the building inspector, just so you get all the T's crossed and all the I's dotted. Okay?
So when is the next meeting, and is it possible for us to be on that agenda?
So that you can contact Robin and she will get you set up.
All right. And at that point, do we feel that we'll be ready to have a resolution?
Well, I think that's up to how fast you work with the town professionals.
All right.
We'll
Thank you.
have to look at it. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. You have a good
Thanks,
night.
Margaret.
Thank you.
Have a good evening, everyone.
You too. Be well. Okay, next on the agenda, we have the Albert French subdivision. This is a public informational hearing. Location is 1762 French Hill Road. Do we have a motion to open the public informational hearing?
I'll move.
Second.
Got a first by Kinkart, second by LaScala. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Joe, you're on.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Joe Safrina, Principal Site Design Consultants. This evening representing Mr. Albert French for his property at 1762 French Hill Road. Robin, can I share the screen?
Yes.
So, you all see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. As I said, the property is located at 1762 French Hill Road. This is Underhill Avenue here. Up French Hill Road, it's this triangular parcel right here. The site is just over 2 acres, and it has a zoned R140, 1 acre zone. And on the property, there are 3 dwelling units which currently exist that were deemed pre-existing by the zoning board. You have one single-family residence here, another single-family residence here, and a third smaller single-family residence there. In 1982, the planning board granted a variance for the 3 dwelling units on one property, and they made reference in their resolution with the potential to subdivide the property. And that is what we are proposing now. Proposing to subdivide the property into 2 lots so that 2 of the dwelling units would be on 1 lot and the other solely on its own lot. This is the proposed property line. It's odd in its directions and changes, but that was done to make it as conforming as possible as far as setbacks and whatnot. Each residence has a septic system. The health department is requiring us to provide demonstrate that we have area for a 100% expansion for the septic system, which are shown here, here, and here. There'll be no additional improvements proposed to make this happen at this time. There's an existing driveway here that serves these 2 residents, and there's an existing driveway here that serves this residence. We've had a plat prepared and submitted that to the planning board, so you have a copy of the subdivision plat. Our next step after this is a formal public hearing, at which point then the planning board can act on this and provide us with a resolution of approval, hopefully, so that we could go to the health department and get them to sign off on this. And that's all for the presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Okay. Anything from the board? I know we've seen this a few times. No questions? John, anything on your end?
I don't have anything at this time, though.
Jim?
Nothing on my end.
I would ask Dan, but I don't think there's any engineering issues here. Robin, we'll open it up to the public. This is a public informational hearing, so if you have any questions, please raise your hand and you can speak to the applicant or to the application.
Don't see any hands.
Quiet. All right, if there's no questions on the application, do I have a motion to close the public informational hearing for the Albert French subdivision?
So moved. Second.
First by Garrison, second by Kinkard. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks,
Thank you.
Joe. Don't go too far.
No?
All right, next we have another public informational hearing. This one is for EnviroGreen Associates. Many addresses on East Main Street. This is again Joe Arena. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing, public informational hearing?
Motion.
Second.
First by Bach, second by Mr. La Scala. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Joe, you're on again.
Okay. Robin, do I need to stop or can I just continue my share?
Just go to another tab.
Okay. Good evening, Joe Sofrino, the Principal of Site Design Consultants, and representing EnviroGreen Associates, Mr. Rick Cipriani, who I believe is on with us tonight, as well as I believe Steve Marino is also on us from Tim Miller Associates, the environmental consultant for the project. So the property is located at 1851 East Main Street in Mohegan. This is the site right here. It's just under 8.5 acres. The site is zoned C3, and the proposal is to construct a single-story commercial building of just over 13,200 square feet. I'll bring it a little closer. So this project has been through the PIH process and the formal public hearing process already. And the proposal at the time was for 2 buildings totaling 16,000 square feet. And during that time frame, the application, we were looking at a connection that was master planned to bring a driveway to connect the property to the west across to the property to the east, both of which have existing accommodations for the driveway to connect. As I said, it was master planned to do that, and that was done in an effort to minimize the amount of traffic that would be entering or exiting onto Route 6 and bring the traffic out to the light here at this intersection right here. So once we were done with the previous public hearing and a lot of work that we had done in multiple iterations we had done and presented to the planning board, we went to the DEC, and we have basically spent the last 2 years at the DEC trying to hammer out a plan they would be accepted. They had the driveway connection going through because we had to cross through a DEC wetland, whose perimeter is basically right along this edge here. So the applicant made several attempts to get them to agree to the plan. At the end of the day, this is the plan which they would go along with, which is quite different than what we were hoping for, which puts us back into this opening up the procedure again and running the public informational hearing. So that's where we are and how we got to where we are. The site will have two access points off of Route 6, and we will be closing 2 other existing access points that are currently there now. There's an existing building on the site now where you have a Dunkin' Donuts and a restaurant, which is accessed from this entrance point here. This driveway would take you through, and then you would have another entrance here. Driveway would continue through parking that's proposed. It would go around the building. As you can see, there's parking around the building and a leg of parking out in the back here. This connection point remains, and our access is exiting at that, or connecting to that point there. We're proposing a total of 141 parking spaces, and that count meets the requirement, and it's based on a restaurant space, a potential restaurant space. Not that there are any tenants selected at this time, but we figured we would go for that as a potential maxing out. So that 141 would include a 2,500 square foot restaurant. At this point, we've taken the engineering to the point where we're just about have completed stormwater pollution prevention plan, and we're waiting on a landscape plan, an updated landscape plan that is, to reflect the new layout. We have a conceptual mitigation plan, which Steve Marino will present shortly. And I believe at the public hearing, we expect to have some conceptual architecturals ready to go to show that. So at this point, I'm going to bring Steve in, and I'm going to have him explain the mitigation plan. Are you there, Steve?
I'm here, yep. Okay, you folks probably remember that as Joe mentioned, there's quite a bit of history with this site. Our first iteration showed that through road. But if you recall, that property to the east, the eastern part of our property now was the location of that former boarding house. There was a building in the back. So what we're showing is parking lot on the eastern side of the property is lawn area, and there was a garage located back there, which has been taken down since. The old boarding house building has been taken down. So, if you recall, and I'm sure several members of this board have been out there, the limits of the wetland are essentially within 10 feet or so of the limits of current disturbance. So we're really working with areas of buffer that are already disturbed, have historically been disturbed. We had first gone in with a plan that filled in some wetlands in order to kind of straighten the parcel out. We got approvals. We were nearing approval from the Army Corps of Engineers for a specific site plan. DEC did come out and look at the wetland line, so the boundary remains good for the wetland line we've shown. And several years back, the town representative also approved the wetland boundary. Following that, we did pick up that extra parcel. Site plan changed a little bit, but the idea of that continued road through the back of the property remained. And that's where we began the negotiations with the DEC. And as Joe mentioned, we went 2 years with the DEC and really didn't make any significant progress. We showed them several different versions of the plan, which incrementally reduced the impact to the wetlands with retaining walls and such. But in the end, they weren't comfortable that they could approve that wetland fill plan under their guidelines. So that's why we're here where we are today. Right now, we're at a point where there's no wetland fill. There are a couple of low retaining walls located on Joe's plan to separate the existing fill and disturbed area from the wetland boundary. So we won't be going into the wetland. Army Corps of Engineers will no longer be involved now because we won't be filling any wetland. DEC recognizes that the buffer area we're talking about here is already disturbed buffer. Literally, it's parking lot, it's buildings, it's storage. So we feel confident that we'll be able to proceed with the DEC with this plan. What we've done then is change the mitigation plan so that it becomes more of a wetland enhancement and restoration plan. We are proposing an invasive species removal plan. Anything within 50 feet of the disturbed area, as you can see in that light blue color, we will go in there, remove invasive species. And there's a number of them between Phragmites and the usual cast of characters back in there. We would go in and remove those species. Then along the edge of the wetland, as shown on the plan, we would be introducing native species plants, trees and shrubs to enhance that buffer and transitional area between the upland and the wetland. Again, to create some kind of a vegetated buffer, a denser vegetated buffer between the new development and the existing wetland. This property was subject of a site plan many years ago, which resulted in that pond there behind the proposed building. That was part of a drainage plan for many years ago. That pond still exists and does function as a wetland system, part of the wetland system right now. The wetland does go from the back of this parcel, the back of the developed part of the parcel, all the way back up to the north. So most of this property is within wetland, and we would be maintaining that. And again, enhancing the boundary between the development and the existing wetland. I think that's kind of covered it. It's replanting, enhancing, invasive species removal, and restoration.
Thank you. You got anything else, Joe?
Oh, yeah. No, that's it.
Okay. Anything from the board?
No.
Anything your end, John?
We're fine, thank you.
Okay. Jim?
Nothing for me.
Okay, I'm sure Dan will have to look at this. This is a public informational hearing, so we're going to now go to the public. Anybody has any questions or concerns, please raise your hand. Give everybody a minute. In the meantime, we did get one letter, or an email, I should say, dated March 18th from Mr. Wayne Staton. He's concerned about he's a neighboring business owner, concerned about the expansion of the building because there are already parking issues. Property 1833 has about 30 parking spots, which are consumed by approximately 20 employees that work at the building. They don't have parking for the customers that come and go. The owner tells the business at this location to park on adjoining properties. This is not going to happen. I don't want to put up signs and fences. I'm all for them expanding, but let's start with parking to accommodate the current tenants. The property is also very neglected as far as the maintenance and garbage that's behind the building. Let's start by taking care of what's already there. That was an email, and that's the only one I see that came in. Anybody, any public, Robin?
Don't see anybody.
All right, doesn't appear so. All right, so this is close of the public informational hearing. Do I have a motion to close the PIH?
Motion.
Second.
First was by La Scala, second by Bach. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 The hearing is closed. Do I have a motion now to close the regular session portion of our meeting and move into the work session, please?
So moved.
First by Kinkard, is there a second?
Second?
Second by Garrigan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're in the work session. Please remember during the work session, this is a time for the board to work with the applicant. Unlike what we just saw with the hearings, there's no input from the public at this point. Public input comes at the hearings or the hearing point, which you just saw a few of. So as we move on, first in the work session is a discussion of a site plan. This is Carrera. This is located at 250 East Main Street. None other than Joe Rena.
Oh,
You're on, Joe.
okay. So the last time this project was before the board was almost a year ago, when we had a public informational hearing for this application. And to familiarize you with the plan again, this is a little over an 8-acre site, and it's own country commercial. And there's currently 2 commercial buildings on the site, and the applicant, Mr. Correa, is interested in constructing 2 freestanding 6,000 square foot storage buildings, warehouse type storage buildings that would be ancillary use for his operation and as well as his commercial tenants. If you recall, we originally started with the buildings being to the back of the site, and with working with the board and conservation board, we've pulled the buildings over in this direction, tucking them into the hill and getting them further away from the neighboring properties here, which are, though they're zone country commercial, they are more, one of them at least is more of a single family residential use. So we've been away for the past year on this for multiple reasons. A lot of it having to do with the COVID pandemic, and between the applicant not not being in the country, and we were trying to get an updated tree survey and update the base survey for the property. Brought us to this time period now. But this time, we do have the tree shown on here. The amount of trees that are going to be removed are somewhere in the vicinity of 50 trees. Most of which we will probably supplement the tree bank fund, as there isn't much opportunity on the site to add the trees. We're going to do, we have a landscape architect looking at it, and we're hoping to provide some tree restoration, but I don't think it's going to come near the 50 trees that we're going to be taking down. So we've prepared a SWIP. We've done all our testing out there, and we'd like to get to a formal public hearing at this point.
Unmute myself. We did get a memo from the Conservation Board dated March 18th, 2021, where they state they've have reviewed this in the past, and the applicant, again, as you said, indicates the trees to be removed, and they're going to be looking for a tree mitigation plan at some point, but it sounds like you're working on that. I know Robin had indicated that we do have an extra week to get notices out, so I think we are possible, Robin, unless I'm mistaken, for the April 12th for a public hearing. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So is it the will or the wish of the board that we get this on the April 12th agenda?
Sure.
I will go for that.
All right, Joe, you'll be ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Just a point of clarification. The total site is 8.22 acres, right, Joe?
Yes. Why? What did I say?
No, I think that's exactly what you said, but also we have in our notes on the agenda that it's in the country commercial zone. Approximately half of the property is in the country commercial, and the subject of this application is completely located within that zone, at least the building, right?
Thank you for the clarification, John.
Yeah, the back half is still residential, correct?
Correct.
I'd like to address that back half. Are there any plans to do anything further with that property in the back, with the residential corner?
Aaron, at this point, there is not, it's not possible to get septics back there because of the slope. And unless sewers become available, there really is no plan to do anything back there at this time. So should sewers become available, that's a different story. Then we would, that opens up a lot of possibilities.
Well, isn't it true though that this is is this one of the parcels that were actually removed from the sewer district some years ago? Or is this still eligible because it's in the front there? I'm not sure.
Well, it's not eligible because there's no sewers in Jefferson Valley.
Yes, but there was a portion of property in Jefferson Valley that was actually taken out of the sewer district.
Maybe Dan would know. I'm not familiar with that, if this area was or was not.
I mean, some of the properties were taken out of Peekskill, but in the worst case scenario, they could buy back in if that became, if there became feasible and the town did sewers there. I guess this area also is in the overlay that the town board is considering. So I suppose that could put some pressure on trying to develop sewers in this whole area, because I think eventually that's going to be the impediment to redeveloping this Jefferson Valley area.
The only reason I raised the issue is whether we should consider some sort of preservation for the for the rear portion of the property, as in granting approval to the front part.
I don't think my client would be in favor of doing that. There's no reason to do that at this time. And I mean, again, If sewers become available, we can tackle or discuss any potential development of that at that time. But I don't think he would be in favor of doing that.
I'm not in favor of that either.
How big is the, commercial side?
About 3 acres, maybe, right?
I don't have it, offhand. I do not have that. It looks like it's pretty close to 50-50, if you ask me. Looking at this, here's the,
maybe even more.
I think it's even a little bigger, but okay.
Yeah, probably is 60%.
Yeah, so the most you're going to get back there anyway, because it's zone R180. You know, the most you would get would be two lots back there. And to be honest with you, to get 2 lots back there, we would have to have a public road. We have to bring a public road back there and give access to the 2 lots. It's not a straight shot in subdividing it anyway. So, you know, I think at this point, you know, we're not anticipating doing that right now, and I just assume just leave that alone.
Okay, I have one more question for you. This one's easy. Just at the far western side of the property, just above, next to the 2-story frame building that's existing, what's shown on the map in that squared area?
You mean this?
54.4?
You mean the easement here?
No. You've got the building.
Right.
Story frame building, and just on the northwest corner, there's what's shown immediately. What does it say there?
Metal containers?
Oh, containers.
Yeah, metal containers, yeah.
All right, because on my drawing, it wasn't labeled the one I was looking at.
Right.
Okay, so those are not permanent structures.
No.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, any other questions?
Else on the board? John, Jim?
I don't have anything right now.
Nothing from me on this.
Hey.
Good.
All right, Joe, thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Joe.
Good night. Next on the agenda, we have the Foothill Street Solar. This is a discussion on the site plan and special permit. Location is 3849 Foothill Street.
Evening, Mr. Chairman. Joe Shanahan from Con Edison Clean Energy Businesses. I think I have met all of you on the board over the last 2.5 years that we've been out in Yorktown looking at this particular site. As many of you will recall, this property has long been held by the Lockwood family. It's a 34-acre parcel with its westerly, its easterly property line along Foothill Street. We have been before you over many months with a proposal to develop a 1.87 megawatt ground-mounted solar facility at that location. We talked to you throughout your deliberations with regard to developing your recently adopted local solar law. After that was adopted, we went in November with a formal site plan application package, which was pending with the board. After conferring informally with the board at a previous work session, there was a number of comments from your individual board members as well as other regulatory agencies in town. So we pretty much pulled that site plan in order to consider that feedback and also to develop a dialogue, particularly with Mr. Tegeter, who had a number of ideas with regard to the plan to make it better. As a result of all of that, we have now submitted a revised site plan application package. Most importantly, within that revised package is a very detailed and dense landscape plan. We've submitted our SWIP. Again, after conferring with Mr. Tegeter, he had mentioned that the Lockwoods had previously explored with the town residential development for the site. On one occasion, he had proposed a 20-lot cluster subdivision. On another occasion, he had proposed a 20-lot conventional subdivision on that site. Mr. Tegeter suggested it might make sense to compare those three projects in terms of its impact on the site, the neighborhood, and the community. As Mr. Lockwood has indicated publicly that if he can't find another means by which to develop the site, he would go back to one of those two residential plans. So we submitted to the board and Mr. Tegeter a narrative that compares the three possible projects. It addresses in detail land cover and disturbance, construction time, visual impact, traffic emissions, greenhouse effect, wildlife habitat, noise, lighting, and town services. So we've submitted that, and with reference to that narrative, under the visual impact category of that narrative, we've also submitted photo simulations for the board's consideration. We not only submitted the required 8 copies of everything, I submitted to Mr. Tegeter an additional 7 copies of that narrative and 7 copies of the photo sims, so each individual board member might have his or her own. That having been done, we also submitted with the landscape plan a detailed inventory of plants, heights, and cost. This new plan along Foothill Street, we previously had proposed a stockade fence is the best means to screen the project. Mr. Tegeter was quite candid with me and said, I don't like stockade fences. So after conferring with him a little further, we pulled the stockade fence from the plan, and we now have left not only the existing 15-foot strip of trees along Foothill Street, but within that area, we've also put together a planting plan, 212 plantings, averaging 5 to 6 feet at installation, not upon full growth. And we've also provided an analysis of where those plants and plantings will be 5 years from now. So we have now at this point, after quite some time and with a lot of help from the town and Mr. Tegeter in particular, we now have a finished revised site plan package pending before you. And we would ask at this point if the board would consider finally, after 3 years, scheduling us for a public hearing on this particular project. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. So have you seen the, we got a bunch of emails. One in particular was from the Putnam Valley Central School District Board of Education. They passed a resolution. Have you seen that?
Yeah, actually, I think the resolution was passed by the town board in collaboration with the Putnam Valley School District. Quite candidly, that resolution contains some rather, I'll call them unfounded, some of them are actually outrageous claims with regard to the solar industry in this particular project. During the public hearing, I'll be happy to address each and every one of the claims set forth in there. Their main concern is that there would be tree removal from the site. There is reference often to removal of the bucolic forest at that particular location and its effect on the students. I would point out to the board that the school district, that school campus in particular, without Mr. Lockwood's permission, went in and developed a trail through that bucolic forest land a while back without any notice to Mr. Lockwood or his permission. And when he ultimately went there and expressed concern about the liability issues of having students walking through his property and asked them to discontinue that, that did create some hard feelings, as you might imagine. I'd also indicate to this board, there is a bit of a hypocritical perspective here. The school doesn't want Mr. Lockwood to cut trees on his property, And yet I think all of you were familiar with the amount of trees that had to be cut for the new high school on that location, the amount of impervious material that came in for driveways and parking lots, etc. So it's not exactly looking at it as Mr. Lockwood had to look at it from the other side of the fence, if you would. But again, during the public hearing, I'd be happy to address each and every item set forth in that resolution.
Hey, Rob, and just for clarity, when did this come to us with this solar application?
Well, they came to us twice because we didn't have a solar law when they first came to us.
What's the current application?
I don't think I put the application in your book.
Robin, I
thought it was
think
in
we
October.
initially filed in November under the new solar law.
Right.
It originally came before the town, I believe, on or in 2017. At that time, it was in front of the town board.
That's
not
correct.
Not this board.
Not this board, no, but it's been in front of the town since then.
Okay, so this board got this October of 2020?
As a application under the new solar law, correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, there's another letter here. There's a few letters. All right. Any questions from the board at this point? Do you want to go through your presentation of the drawings you did?
If I may inquire, Mr. Chairman, I don't see my engineer as a participant here.
Webley's there.
There he
He's
is.
right next to you.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Websley, may I bother you in accordance with the chair's request to do an overview of the project?
Yes, let me share my screen. Yes, since our last submission, this is what we have focused on, because the board had a concern regarding the visibility on the front yard of the project. So we went ahead and had a landscape architect, a licensed landscape architect, look at the front yard and the existing trees in order to see what's best for the front yard. And with that came this, as you can see here, all the way from this end of the property line to all the way down to where the arrays are going to end on the south end. We have all types of trees, and if you look at our latest submission, it details the type of trees and the height for each trees within the first installation and also after 5 years. One more thing that we did was, in the first submission, we did have the batteries along the northern side of the road. And we decided that it would be better to move it away from the school and the property line and move it more towards the south of the road. And also we have provided more landscaping just to shield that view from Foothill. One more addition to the plan was the transformer. We have, I think, finalized the location of it and also provided additional screening and plantings around it. And if you look at our latest submission, you'll see that in the photo simulations, we do show all views from, I believe, from this end, and you can see what it will look like from Foothill Street, just to make sure that we mitigate any visual impact that might have on the project. When it comes to the engineering of the site, we keep the same stormwater management practices that we have been proposing, and we submitted our SWIP, and the SWIP shows that over time there will be no discharge from the site will decrease from pre to post construction. So we will not be impacting the stormwater management on site. We're not going to be impacting the flow of stormwater discharge on site, and anything going onto the school will be mitigated by this pond, which is on the western side of the property. Here it is. right here. So any stormwater discharge that will be going into the school will be mitigated. The impact of it will be mitigated by that pond, which catches a majority of the drainage area on that side of the fence, and also for this side of the array, all of that's gonna be mitigated by this pond right here, and most of it is collected by using this drainage swell, and eventually goes into this pond, which ultimately discharges into this wetland. And in addition, we also want to mention that we will not be disturbing any wetlands or streams throughout this project.
So you're reducing the post-construction runoff as compared to the pre-construction runoff. So you're reducing it. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Do you know how much you're reducing it by, like a percentage factor or something like that? Estimate?
I don't have that exactly in front of me, but that's something I can look at. We have, our SWIP has the calculations where it shows exactly what those numbers are.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Websley, is it possible you could show the documents that shown as photo simulations? Do you have those?
Yes, there they are.
Can you walk through those for us, please? Thank you.
Yes. So this is the first one, and as you can see, the title here shows that's a day one view. I think this is coming from the south side of Foothill Street, driving towards the school. And here again, kind of a similar view, but from a different angle. Also, day one, as you can see, these are the added trees along here, and you can kind of see, you can barely see the chain link fence, as well as the tips of the arrays. This is another picture of day one, initially upon installation of the trees. And this is an estimation of what it's going to look like after 5 years. So here you have no view of the panels whatsoever as you're driving along Foothill. And similar here, there's no view of the panels. No view of the panels or fence. It's another photo simulation after 5 years. Barely see a tip of the panel right here. And this is a closer picture. This is the area I was talking about, closer to the transformer. Day one looks something like that with the trees surrounding it. This is another picture from if you're facing the south side of, if you're facing from the kind of north side of the project, you're looking down at the transformer. And this is a similar picture with photo 7 right here, but the difference between day one and year 5, you can see is pretty substantial. And this is similar to photo simulation 8, day 1 and year 5, a pretty substantial blockage of the transformer and any equipment. And this is kind of an aerial view of the photo simulation. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, the tree buffer on the north side, Mr. Darboux, abutting the school. How much of that buffer that remains there is actually on the subject property? Would you venture a guess? 20 feet? I don't know if you can scale it off one of your pond structures or the...
I believe it's roughly 20 feet.
Okay.
It gets smaller as you get across here.
Of course.
But we do have, I believe our landscape plan does have additional plantings on this area as well.
Anybody else? Any questions?
Yes. My threshold question is, before we get to issues of visual buffering and plantings and things of that sort, just to go back to the question of the appropriateness of this use in the first place. And I think I have a question for the town attorney in a way, and I've been wrestling with the pros of solar energy versus the impact of this project versus the impacts of the underlying uses, which could also be done here. And I wonder, how much do we need to know about the alternatives in order to address the impacts of the application versus the no-build impact, whether you go back to the underlying residential zone. I saw the letter, I read the narrative, but I didn't see anything that was, approved. And my understanding was, on the history of this site, is that there was some real constraints on the residential building that could be done, generated by the location of the stream and whether the stream could be crossed. And I don't know enough about the history of this, in my mind, to evaluate the alternatives and say, yes, the impact of this proposal is less than an impact of a residential development. So my question is there additional information that we need or could use or are required to consider in addressing the impacts of this proposal?
All right, if I could respond to that. If this was considered a type 1 action and if this was the subject of a draft environmental impact statement, you would be required to consider alternatives to the proposed plan. However, when there is no environmental impacts being discussed, you are being prepared. You are not required to study alternatives. You can certainly choose to do so if that is the board's desire, but there's no requirement that you do it unless a positive declaration has been issued and a draft environmental impact statement's being prepared.
Okay, thank you.
Can I give you a little more information?
Yes, please.
Since I was around. The plan that is shown in Mr. Con Ed's letter, Mr. Shanahan's letter, was a plan that was looked at by the planning board and the town board. Mm-hmm. And the process there is that the planning board, when they are considering clustering, which there are two plans, one is a cluster plan, one is not, is that the planning board sends to the town board a plan, two plans, a cluster plan and a regular conventional subdivision plan, in which they believe the conventional subdivision plan represents what the property would likely support in terms of unit and lot count. So the 20 lots was sent to the town board under that belief of the planning board at the time. So while it was not approved by the planning board, it was approved for, as I recall, and I can check it for you, I believe it was approved to do the clustering. It never went forward, I think, mostly by virtue of the applicant, running into whatever issues that they often run into. So we didn't see it go forward. But that 20 lot plan, both, is what the planning board had determined was a reasonable unit count to be expected under a conventional subdivision for this property. I think you did say something, Aaron, about whether or not the stream needed to be crossed, and in both plans there is not a stream crossing, except for, as I recall, a sewer line or a couple of sewer lines. So when you look at those plans, those are fairly well developed plans.
And John, do you recall the date when those went through the planning board?
Off the top of my head, I don't. I think it was probably in the 2010s, early in the 2010s or late 2000s. So could have been 08, 09, that area, or early 2010.
2008.
2008.
All right, so in 2008, the planning board at that time looked at the impacts and came up with an approved clustering that went to the town board.
Correct.
Okay.
And I'm not offering that they looked at it in terms of an EIS. They didn't look at it at the level of scrutiny that you would if you were doing that type of review, but they did it according to how they look at a subdivision to determine, given the general grading, the general access, the general environmental conditions, that it could support those number of lots.
Hey, Dan, are you on?
Yeah, yeah.
Dan, if I could ask you a question, from 2008 until the current date, has there been any stormwater changes or regulations that might have impacted what was something that was proposed in 08 to now?
I don't think there was really anything of any consequence that impacted residential subdivisions like this. And it's also a non-watershed, so the New York City watershed regs don't apply here.
Okay.
So I guess to your point or your query that the stormwater wouldn't have gotten much larger and potentially reduced the calculation of the cluster count.
Right. And also, if it did get larger and you reduced the unit count, you still may have had the same or even more disturbance.
And so on the town's end, obviously, thank you, Dan. Very helpful to have you here. It sounds like none of the stormwater regulations have changed. Town regulations that might have changed over the course of the last 13 years? I know the tree laws changed. Have any of the wetlands codes or anything else changed that would have changed the way the 08 planning board would have looked at it compared to now?
I don't think that there was significant changes, and I'm not talking about the tree law, in terms of the wetlands and or any other, like the stormwater, erosion, sediment control. Nothing significant that I believe would have changed drastically what you see on the paper today that was drawn in 2008. I don't think there is. In terms of the tree law, everyone understands what the differences are. There's, much different mitigation requirements.
Right. And back in 08, did they ever look at a solar farm for this project that you can recall as an alternative?
No, they didn't.
Okay. Aaron, I don't know if that answered any of your questions.
It certainly helps, yes.
And just to add, I just took a look at the stormwater numbers, and it looks like we're going to be reducing the flows by 15% on the 100-year storm.
From pre to post construction.
Yes.
15%?
Total site, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Websley.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the board at this time?
No, I remember council's comment on another application, or perhaps it was even this one. No, it wasn't. It was the Croton Overlook. That these types of projects are not permanent in nature, in that, once you approve them, they do have a lifespan, and that does not preclude other applications coming in the future. That kind of opened my eyes to the possibility of this type of project, in a number of areas. And I think Croton Overlook site is going to be very similar in regard to what's going to happen, what's there now in terms of trees, et cetera, and what might be there if they bring the solar project. I was pleasantly surprised, if it is accurate, and I'm not passing judgment in any way. The apparent buffer that would be there between the school property and the solar project, and they will be generally looking upward, up the hill toward it. I drove by last week, and having that tree buffer there, I'm pleasantly surprised to see that will remain possibly on both sides of the boundary line of the properties. But I think it's a much more attractive plan than I first imagined, based on that last slide, that photo sim slide. Seeing it on the hill developed with the trees around it looks a lot more attractive than I imagined when they first came in. And words like obliteration and that kind of thing came to mind at that time. It's if they can soften the impacts and mitigate the impacts visually and environmentally, and not have a permanent use on the site, it's something that I would be much more open to as we move forward. Just my opinion.
Rob, Bill, you got anything?
Nothing here.
Right now.
Would be, I'm sure the neighbors are gonna like to wait 5 years for that thing to be covered up. They said 5 years. They showed you a picture 5 years. The neighbors got to wait 5 years for that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Please.
Yeah, I understand the member's comment about 5 years, but that's part of what you do with photo simulations. You folks have reviewed enough landscape plans in your times on the board that often landscape plans come in and you've got 30-inch or 4-foot shrubs, and people tell you what it's going to look like 20 years from now. Mr. Teggett made it very clear to me, and I adhered to his good advice, that we do this from the beginning, getting rid of that visual impact. And if you look at the inventory in terms of species, in terms of height, in terms of width, you'll see that we're planting very substantial plants on day one. Many of them are 7 to 8 feet tall going in the ground. All of them are averaging over 6 feet when they go in the ground. And again, there's 212 of those. So I could have done photo sims and indicated to you on day one you won't see anything. That's unrealistic. I've been doing this a long time. We've been at it here in Yorktown for a long time. We tried to give you true visualizations of what would happen when we do this planning plan, when we spend that $160,000, and what it will look like day one. You will see some tips of the panels, no doubt about it. There will be some spots where, if you're looking, as you're driving by, if you crane your neck, you will see some parts of the chain link fence. But quite honestly, it will be negligible on day one, and it will be all but invisible in year 5.
And in fairness to Mr. Shanahan's comment, really at this point in time, not to say what future development may occur on that portion of Foothill Street as you head north out of our town and into the town of Putnam Valley, there are, Bill, you mentioned the neighbors. There really are there are a couple of neighbors. There really are very few. There's a very two large parcels on the opposite side of Foothill Street. So that would be on the eastern side of Foothill, heading toward the Putnam Valley line, that, are wooded and, remaining wild for decades now. So the impact to the neighbors, I mean, there are a couple of neighbors, but it's not like there's a neighborhood on the other side of the street. It's kind of a cut through back and forth from Putnam Valley to the town of Yorktown, with them coming toward Route 6 for the most part and then going back home. So it's, you know, in all fairness, as we go out there, and hopefully we will go out there for a site visit, I think that will become apparent. I drove down, you know, up and down the street twice. Actually, I did the loop going around Lockwood and Foothill, trying to get my head around it. And until I saw these photo sims, you know, I wasn't sure what it would look like from either side. But that's my impression of what goes on. You know, up towards the fork of Lockwood, or south of where this project is, the fork of Lockwood and Foothill Street, there are more homes in that area, but it thins out quite a bit in terms of quote unquote neighbors as you're heading down there. So just so we all have a clear view as we begin moving forward into public informational hearings, et cetera. And you know, if you have the chance to drive by, I would recommend all the members of the board do until we do have a site walk.
I have just one quick question. What's the setback off, like from on Foothill there, the setback from the chain link fence to the first array?
Websley, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think from the street to the array itself, it's 55 feet. The chain link fence to the array itself usually varies 8 to 10 feet.
So that would put the chain link fence about 40 feet off the street?
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, Websley, but I think that's about it.
From the edge of the panels to the chain link fence, that's gonna be 16 feet. Just really enough buffer for a car to drive through if needed.
Mm-hmm.
And then what do you show as kind of the distance from the street to the chain link fence?
So that would be about, so from the edge of the panels to the edge of the feet, that's about 55 feet.
Right. Okay.
So minus 16, that's
39, 40 feet.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else from the board? Just two quick questions. Were any visuals done from, let's say, the Putnam Valley High School, middle school area towards this site, or any of the other neighboring areas?
Well, as I put forth my narrative, the Underhill view shed is totally blocked out by existing vegetation. When we looked at the school and we spent some time down there, there is, as I think Mr. King-Cott acknowledged, there is a natural buffer that we're maintaining there. But more important than the buffer is the topography. So I would indicate to you, if that building has 3 stories to it, you might be on the 3rd floor and look down and see the tip of the panels. But for the first 2 stories, you're looking into that natural buffer as well as the topography. And I can't use the word invisible, but it's darn close to being invisible from those angles.
Okay, thank you. I look back and we got both separate letters from the school district board and the board.
Okay, I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I've never seen the one from the school district.
Okay, we'll make sure you get those.
Thank you.
But I think it would be important to show any potential impacts as they've spelled out in the letters. But I
Happy
think
to do that. We'll do that.
I think it's important that you look at that letter. And as John Kinkart had said, I think it's important now that we get a site visit scheduled. I think as we have in the past few site visits, we include the conservation board and the tree board with us, if possible, Robin.
Okay.
May I ask, Mr. Chairman, when we submit those packages to your board, would the tree committee and the conservation board have received a packet, or should I submit those to them directly?
So next on my list to read to you was, we got today a letter dated March 22nd, 2021, from the Yorktown Tree Conservation Advisory Commission, or TCAC. Dear Chairman Fahm, members of the Planning Board, the TCAC received additional documents relating to this project on March 17th, 2021. we have the following initial comments. 1, requirements under the revised tree law for non-administrative permit applications per 270-8.c should be followed, so the adequacy of the proposed mitigation may be evaluated and a determination made whether off-site or other mitigation should be considered. 2, the comparison of solar versus residential development by Joe Shanahan on behalf of the applicant is instructive. While there may be some opportunities for mitigation of tree removals under the residential development, the comparison makes clear the superior environmental benefits of the solar development. The non-permanent alteration of the landscape under the solar plan is key when compared to the permanent alteration under the residential alternative, not to mention the environmental benefits of providing a significant amount of clean energy. Sincerely, Bill Kellner, Chair, Tree Conservation Advisory Commission, and his members. So that we got today. So they got it.
Thank you.
All right, so Rob, we'll schedule a site visit.
Sure.
Any other questions at this point?
Do you want to schedule the public informational hearing? I think you're doing one of those and a regular hearing.
It's a wish of the board.
Yeah, I think we should.
So will we have that for the April 12th?
Yes.
Mr.
Mr.
Shanahan,
Shanahan, you're familiar with the process? We have the 2 hearings.
Yes, I understand.
Great.
Thank
I
you.
would make sure you go through the correspondence we got. I'm sure Robin or John can get that to you so you're prepared.
Shall do. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
You do be well. Be safe.
Thanks, Wesley.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wesley. Websley. Okay. Next on the agenda is the Taco Bell in Mohegan Lake. This is a discussion of amended site plan and special use permit for outdoor seating. Location 3571 Mohegan Avenue. And we got Paul here tonight.
Yes.
How are you, Paul?
Hey, Paul.
Good. Hope everybody's well. Good evening. For the record, Paul Dumont, JMC, here tonight on behalf of Keystone Mohegan Lake, LLC. With me tonight is Lucille Munns, who's a senior landscape architect with our firm. So tonight, it's just a continued discussion of the Taco Bell Mohegan Lake project at Mohegan Avenue and Route 6. At the last meeting, we had discussed the landscaping design for the front of the property around the drive-through lane. We had previously proposed mostly shrub plantings with some grasses and a picket fence. Since then, we have revised the design. We're now proposing hedge plantings and some smaller areas of shrubs. So at this time, I'll let Lucille discuss the landscaping a little bit further. Lucille, are you on?
I'm unmuted. How's that?
There you go.
Better.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Lucille Munns here. So what we worked on revising was the hedgerow. Basically, came up with a hedge of Ilex glabra, which is evergreen. And then what we thought would be nice to have is aspects of some softening at the corners and some areas for seasonal interest. So proposing to use limelight hydrangea in the corners, foxtrot, it's a low ornamental grass, and some black-eyed Susans. Again, just for a little seasonal interest and color. We pulled the hedge away from the roadway so that any snow loading could be, wouldn't pummel the plants as the plow came around during the drive. And another reason why we chose the Ilex glabra is because it's native, but also too, there's a boxwood blight. So we're very reluctant to use boxwoods these days. Again, it's native, and the the Ilex glabra variety we're using is called Shamrock, which is fuller and has more leaf at the ground. Some of the glabras or inkberries is the common name, can tend to be leggy at the bottom, but this is much fuller and denser and has much more leaf from the bottom.
And we also took a look at some of those sections again that we had looked at last time, which are very similar. The hedge will, create a very similar softening effect of the drive-through lane, like we had discussed last time.
Paul, is there any way to compare what's proposed here with what you did last time?
Yes. So this was what was proposed last time. So before we had right along the drive-through lane a row of grasses. Then we had the picket fence that we had discussed earlier. Then we had a row of the little lime hydrangeas. So really, in this area in particular, generally along the fence, the previously proposed fence line, we now have the hedge row.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? John?
Just my question is, the hedge material, the ilex, what's the typical mature height of that? And can it be trimmed like a hedge? In other words, kept at a certain height?
Yes, it is. It tops out at 3 feet, and it stays tight, 30 inches, but 30 inches to 3 feet, and it could be totally trimmed into a linear hedge. Okay. It has, very similar aspects to boxwoods, but it is, for the most part, what's nice about it too is that it doesn't necessarily need to be trimmed into a straight line. It'll have that same effect, but not as, basically they're all topped at the same height, and they'll work together. We planted them a little closer than we normally would have, just to make it a tighter hedge as well.
Okay, so if there's a maintenance condition in which you have to maintain it between 30 and 36 inches, that's not a problem for the client?
No, because it's not going to get 30, 30, it's going to top out at 36.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to stay in the 30 to 36 inch height. That's not a problem.
Okay. Any other comments, concerns? Otherwise,
I wasn't aware there was a boxwood blight.
It's pretty epic, actually, and quite sad.
Wow.
Yeah, I have had clients that I've worked with for over 20 years called me, and everyone's in a panic because it's bad.
What, it just kills them off completely?
Yes.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. So there's a few varieties that seem to be a little more resistant, but they're more of the dwarfer varieties. Yeah, it's something that, and
well, thank you for bringing your expertise to the table. I think you froze up.
If you like, are also deer resistant too, so that's a good thing, and they're drought tolerant.
Great.
All right, what's the next steps here?
Thank you, Lucille. The applicant's anxious to move forward. We would respectfully request that the board set the public hearing. We've had the public informational hearing.
Robin, can we hold that on the 12th too? We got enough room?
You could do that.
Any thoughts from the board?
Yeah, let's do it.
It's gonna be a long night. What do you think Tom's gonna say?
11:30 cutoff.
Yeah.
All right, so Paul, you'll be ready for the meeting on the 12th?
Yes, yep.
Okay. Lucille, thank you very much for your input and your expertise. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Good night.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you,
Wish
everybody. Good night.
everyone well. Have a good night.
Be
Good
safe.
night.
All right.
Okay, next one, we haven't seen this one in a while. We have the Shrub Oak International School. This is a discussion of the amended site plan. Location is 3151 Stony Street.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. David Steinmetz from the law firm of Zarin and Steinmetz. Glad to be back on behalf of the Shrub Oak International School. We have our entire team here tonight. And Mr. Chairman, since we processed before you and the board several years back, the team has changed. I guess I remain the constant along with Brian Koffler, our client. But I'm really pleased to inform the board that Divney Tung and Schwalbe, Jerry Schwalbe and Donna Maiello have joined the team. Carlito Holt from Provident Engineering has joined the team as our traffic engineer. And Eric Kyer from KGD has joined as project architect. So we are back and excited to be back. The project, as I assume most of you know, has proceeded. The school has opened. The school has been accepted quite well at the moment. Student enrollment is about 42. There are 24 students. And just to take a step back to remind, especially the new board members and the public, this is a school for autistic children and young adults. It is both residential and day schooling, located at the location on Stony Street the chair indicated. 42 current students enrolled, 24 boarding, approximately 18 coming in for day programs. In terms of staffing, there are 111 academic folks employed there, 13 administrative, and 57 facilities and operations individuals, obviously multiple shifts. The site is extremely conducive to this type of use, as we had talked about with the board several years ago. So why are we back? We're back because it's time to kind of approach what we refer to as the second phase of the development of the site. And there are some project updates and improvements that the new team have formulated with the Kofflers and the school administration. These relate to on-site circulation, parking and parking location, and the propriety of having parking in some of the areas that we had previously presented has now been questioned and been relocated. We want to talk a little bit about drainage. We want to talk about some actual physical modifications to the building, its recreational components, its pool, etc. I have had some offline preliminary discussions with John Tegeter. I know he was hoping that we would present the proposed amendments or modifications this evening, engage in a discussion with the board. And I guess the way your last item ended, you're not going to be happy that I'm going to tell you that I was really hoping we could have a public information session next month. So Nancy's going to calculate how much time you really have next month and see if we can slot ourselves in. But I'll save that debate for the end of tonight's presentation. But we're excited to share with you where we are and obviously answer questions, because I know there will be some based upon some things that John foreshadowed for me. So I'm going to turn it over to Jerry Schwalbe so he can walk us through the site plan. I know there are some board members that were not on when we originally got this approved, so we're really happy to take some steps back and explain things that others may already know. Jerry, you want to proceed from here?
Thank you, David. And good evening, everyone. So if you could, Don, if you could share your screen. We have a site plan. I'd like to go back, at least just to go over a little bit about what we had, what was approved originally. So when the plan comes up, let's see. So the site is 127 acres in size. So here before you, can everyone see that? Mm-hmm. So this is the approved I'll call it the master plan. So when this was approved in 2017, it included a number of improvements, including access roads, building additions, restoration of other buildings, and so forth. And of the 127 acres, approximately 56 acres, Don, if you could just show that fence line on the westerly side between the wetland area and the main development area. So there's about 70 acres that are on the left side, which is mostly wooded. And then the remainder of the development, which had always been sort of developed in a way, is about 56 acres. And then you can see it has all that frontage on Stony Street. Just to the south of this parcel is the Granite Knolls Park that was recently completed last year. Obviously didn't get a lot of use with COVID, but certainly that's, from what I understand, is pretty much developed in what they've got so far. So when we look at the building, and if you want to zoom in a little bit, Donna, the building is about, it was a seminary originally when it was built, and it was built in the, I think, the late 50s. It was about 281,000 square feet. Floors range from 4 to 5 stories. Obviously, the church component, the former church component that was in the center was much higher. And the Kofflers have developed that building, as David said, into a boarding school and also a day school. And as you can imagine, converting space over has been a challenge, to say the least. Eric Heyer's office has been helpful in looking at the building and trying to make things work better. And we have some suggestions in the end to show you what that may look like. So originally there's a driveway that comes in off of Stony Street, and that kind of circulars around the parking lot to the north. Then it comes into into what we call the oval, which is at the center of the building. And that all exists, and it exists today. And then they had a back end parking area that went down to the service loading area down the bottom. That still exists today. And then to allow for the staff and visitors to come in, they originally had a parking lot over on the east side of the building. Access to that parking lot came in from the center front entrance there by the building, and then it meandered through the parking lot. And then that's sort of going to be phased, and we had gotten an amended approval for phasing between phase 1 and 2. And just to point out, that dashed dark line that you see that comes through the site across the building and goes down the page, that in essence is the New York City watershed line. So one of the reasons what we did in the beginning was to phase the project so as to get the project going in a way, because as you know, going through the watershed requirements and the drainage, it would have taken a little bit more time, and time was not what they had. So they had to, separate this out into phases, which we did. So phase 1 is generally ongoing. The building opened in 2018 in September. It opened throughout COVID, throughout the challenges they had, but certainly are continuing with the work and so forth. Towards the south of the campus, you can see the other buildings that were existing to remain, basically single-family houses that would be either used for staff housing or for parents that want to come visit as they develop the programs going forward. There was an equestrian center, buildings 10 and 11, with a paddock area around it. And there was some drainage areas along Stony Street that was primarily for secondary access road that came in off of Stony Street that served the back end of the building complex, but also provided another exit or entrance into the town park to the south. At that, where that hand is right now, there is a gravel parking lot that the park had developed. Joe Arena had worked on that site plan, and we met with him and understood what his design goals were at that time. And, we tried to connect into a driveway connection for them to use at the secondary entrance as well, or also for efficiency purposes. That little boxed out area, just to note for those that don't know it, that's a cemetery that's going to stay and exist, and it's currently used or, has been used. And then in the back of the building, just really quick, there was an emergency access road that came through the back that was worked out with the fire department so as to link in access to the back of the building for fire protection purposes. Also, a number of utilities have been upgraded. The water system has been improved. I think to date, the coppers mentioned that they had spent about $26 million with both interior and exterior improvements so far. And then lastly, there was a helipad that was approved that had not been yet constructed, but it was approved to be in the meadow area in the middle. So that's really the overall. So phase one primarily was the areas above the New York City watershed lines, including the portions of the parking, landscaping, and Donna, maybe we can go to the next sheet. That would maybe make it a little bit easier to understand what the phase one improvements would be. So what we did is highlighted elements of the phase one improvements that are still ongoing, that have not been completed yet. And actually, there's a couple of things there that we'd like to modify, and we'll show you this on the next image as well. So you can see some of the things that were proposed in phase one, beginning with sidewalks, linking the north parking lot to the main building site, landscaping along the northern buffer, the porta share at the front of the building, obviously the helipad with an access drive, an animal barn that's towards the bottom, and then the paddock area. And then finally, various lighting along the main entrance road, as well as the front entry to the building. So that basically is, work ongoing. One thing we didn't show in here was it's actually being coordinated with Con Edison to improve the main electrical service to the building, which is very important. So that's a commitment they have to go to do this year. So that's being planned with Con Edison as well. And then, obviously these improvements will continue, and the goal is to get these completed, as they go forward. Donna, the next slide. So in going forward with the improvements, it's always like the same thing when you buy a house. When you move in, you finally say, well, I didn't really want to do this when I first started because I think it's a better plan if we do it a different way, move things around. And obviously Eric Kyer's office looked at the interior of the building, and as they got through it, they realized certain elements would be better off in a different place. So beginning with the building improvements, there's the pool house, which is located in the center courtyard between the two wings, has been located to the west side of the building. Better access also for maintenance of the pool by the loading dock area. The chemicals can be brought in easily. So I think overall it's a better plan. Back there fits into the building much nicer. And then for the growth of the building, there was some space in the basement of those wings, but again, they're basement units. And looking at that long-term growth, that a future classroom building, architecturally and also in the program itself would make more sense having it in that location. It's just a grass area, and that would fit in pretty nicely. The top of the page, you'll see a blue area where we're adding a new driveway access coming off the main driveway, coming right in directly to the parking lot, both from a fire access point of view and also for staff and employees coming in. They'd be able to come right directly into that parking lot versus going through that oval circle. We'd also then relocate the parking that was shown on the west side there. Not really as efficient there, but moving it adjacent to the parking lot that's on the east side. So putting everything together on that location, having a better access into the building, folks can come right in there, the staff and employees coming right through there into the side of that building. We'll provide some stormwater management areas in that meadow there. And then, for the basic, for the rest of the front meadow there, we had to rearrange the paddocks slightly, and then relocate the animal barn, which is actually slightly smaller than what we showed on the original plan. The idea that's for therapeutic treatment with the kids they're brought out to the barn. They're able to look at the animals. I think we understand they're going to be mostly sheep in there, and the paddocks are just so that they can, use different paddocks for grazing purposes and sort of taking them.
Jerry, before you leave the parking area,
Yeah.
could you address the question that I had put to you about whether, based upon grade, that additional parking move to the front would be visible from the street or not?
Yeah, that's a good point. So the road is down at a lower elevation, and then, as you know, if you drive up Stony Street, looking up, you can sort of see the tops of the buildings, I think, in the wintertime especially. But you really can't see the grounds up there because it sort of goes up steep and then it plateaus over. So you're not looking down onto it, you're looking up and over. So those parking lots would be not really visible from the street unless you started even climbing into the driveway. You're actually so low you can't even see any part of the campus until you sort of come up at the top of the north end of that road. Then that's where you kind of see, looking towards the east, you kind of see where the parking would be. But it's really a vast area in there, and it's pretty open. And the Koffers definitely want to keep that as a meadow, and they like the idea of looking out, because we actually proposed putting more parking up in that area, and they felt, well, you know what, we really like that open area, and it's great for the kids, so we want to keep that sort of in that same context that's there today. The biggest change, I guess, to look over is there was a secondary entrance off to Stony Street in that location. Also, that would serve the park. And, reviewing the traffic, and the traffic analysis actually was done with looking at it from a single driveway, and the levels of service for a single driver are about, A and B service levels coming in either that location or the other location. So, and looking at the overall impacts of the access road coming in was quite extensive in terms of excavation and disturbance. So we were trying to look at different options to that. One option was, we still need to have emergency access, which we want to do. And if you see the blue roadways that are on the south and west side, there's an existing driveway there now. The grades are very flat. Obviously, it's not a wide enough road, but certainly could be widened to the minimum 20 feet for fire access. And that would create that link back into the campus. We met with the parks. They still would like to have a connection. Also, for their purposes, they could use it going back and forward as well for emergencies. They also asked the school if they could, have an overflow parking lot, which you see there, which is about 62 parking spaces. Obviously, we'll have to have some drainage. There'll be a basin next to that in the lower area, and obviously not impacting the cemetery that's off to the east there. So, and that pushing it back up on that hill, because I think the concern last time when the board reviewed this, there was some concern that the extension of that driveway on the south end is a little steep as it gets down towards Stony Street. There's a section there is about 20%. But then as you come closer up to where the blue area is located, and Don, I don't know if you can zoom in there a little bit more, you can see it. I mean, you probably can't see it, but that area is much flatter in that location. The idea was trying to create a link or a connection from the main access driveway to the park, which is at the end of that blue line, but also then connecting into the site to allow for traffic for them to use as overflow traffic parking, and also in case of an emergency. Also, the beige area that you see on there is the building for the proposed equestrian center. A little bit more detail. Eric's office provided some more detailing, and I think that was in your package to show you some of the thoughts on where that may go, and pushed it further south because it seemed to make more sense having it further away from the core campus, and then allowing for the fields in the meadow to be, north and south in that area, which creates a wonderful view from the building all the way down south into the park. So these are the things that we were all thinking about in terms of additional improvements to the campus. And it's constantly changing as it go forward. Things come up, and it's an old building, so there's surprises, as you can imagine. But certainly, we're trying to, make this work, and wanted to just, talk to you guys about the changes that we're looking at here. And obviously, we have other drawings and architectural images as well. This is an image rendering that Eric's office had put together of the campus. It gives you a little bit more clarity on where the buildings are situated and how the roads are then laid out on the campus.
So thank you, Jerry. So, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, obviously we wanted to highlight at a high level the most significant changes and updates and improvements. We're happy to walk through this more slowly and answer questions. The Kofflers and the design team think that this is actually an improved design over from what we originally presented and secured approvals. And we're anxious to proceed with phase 2 of the project and would like to advance our planning board review.
Any questions from the board?
Not here.
Nope.
I remember a few years back taking it was like this class at T-Town, and the gentleman giving the lecture was talking about the reuse of existing buildings and how it, rather than tear them down and go there and really make changes. David, the guy looks a little bit like you. It was a very good class, and I think it's a very appropriate that this is exactly what you were talking about there.
Yes.
I think at this point, do you think it would help if we did do a site visit with this one too, guys?
We're certainly amenable to that. And I know that there are some questions about the access. John and I talked about that. I think if you go out there, you'll understand why the Kofflers, Jerry's office, and in particular, Carlito thinks that we can integrate these two sites together, meaning the park and the school. And the interesting thing, and I don't think Jerry or I highlighted it, and we probably shouldn't assume the planning board is aware, the Parks Department and the folks who are responsible for that park have been in really close contact with the Kofflers. I didn't even know until I was kind of brought back into the loop. I think Parks is excited to coexist alongside the school and thinks that they can get suitable emergency access through our school. And conversely, we like knowing that they are right there. We're happy to provide this gravel parking area on our south end. And one of the things that we're pleased is that by integrating the two sites physically, and you can go out there and see that, we know that we can get second or emergency access out over their property. So though not originally designed this way, these two sites really work in conjunction with one another quite well.
And I think, if we met out there, maybe with the Parks Department, it's a huge campus. I'm sure it'll answer a lot of questions that we might have.
One last item that Jerry and I have spent some time talking about internally, by eliminating and whoever's controlling the cursor in that southeast corner, by eliminating that connection out to Stony Street that we showed on the other plan, we're eliminating just a tremendous amount of grading and earth movement in the DEP watershed that we don't think we need to do. And I know, and Rich, and John knows, and the other board members, we spent a lot of time and energy analyzing that last time through and engineering it. So it's not like the Kofflers did not spend time, money, and effort doing that originally. It's just, and I kind of like Jerry's analogy, we've moved in, we understand that, maybe the refrigerator belongs over there, not over here. And sometimes until you figure out where the TV goes, you don't know where you want to get up and go to the refrigerator. So we're now in there for a while and coexisting nicely with the park, hence some modifications that are kind of significant.
It was well put. All right, so can we set that up after with the other site visit, you think?
Only if you set it up with the other public information.
Can I ask you?
Upset Tom.
He found his razor and his sense of humor.
Can I ask a quick question, Dave?
Yes.
and you may have gone over this, and I apologize if you did. The new classroom elbow there in the middle, yes, that's perfect. What was behind the decision that led you to believe that you realized that you need additional classroom space?
I'm going to defer, Jerry, maybe we should let Eric answer that. Is that?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, yeah.
If Eric can be unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah, so we did an analysis of the overall 280,000 square feet, the number of bedrooms that ultimately the school is planning to have, and the space that was remaining at the end. And some of the space that was originally counted was some basement space where the windows are 6 or 7 feet above ground. And for some classes, that's okay. But for a school of this quality and caliber, it's an international school attracting students from all over the world, it really needed state-of-the-art classrooms as well and teaching spaces. And when we got in, we spoke to the different teachers about how they plan to teach, the number of teachers in a room with the students, and where they were best located in the building. It became quite apparent that the existing building didn't have the number of classrooms that were necessary, which is ultimately probably in the range of 70 classrooms when this is all said and done. And so we looked at a series of different locations where those additional classrooms could be housed, including putting a third floor on top of an existing classroom area. And it was finally determined that this central location was ideal because they actually have 4 different programs, and depending on which program grows the fastest or becomes more dominant or less dominant or changes over time, the central location gives them a great opportunity to be flexible in that way, so that over the course of the year or over the course of several years, that the use of each of those classrooms could be altered depending on the age group or the types of students that we're planning to be in there.
So it's an additional 70 classrooms?
No. Most of the classrooms are in the main building. That dark blue section right there, I believe, has 12 classrooms per level. So it's 24 of those, ultimately 70. So right now we probably have something in the range of the potential of having 45 classrooms in the main building, as well as the gym and cafeteria and the other associated spaces.
Okay, and so the anticipated maximum student population is not changing?
Correct. The population is not changing currently based on the original discussions. I know it sounds like a lot of classrooms, so that's why you're asking that, I assume. So just keep in mind, some of these classrooms will have 4 students in them or 8 students maximum. You're not going to have, these are like 20 or 30 student classrooms. So currently we're still looking at that original number of students as currently. Now that could change in the future, but right now that's currently our plan.
Okay, and the future maximum student population was it 300? Is that what I recall?
I think 350, Brian, or was it?
No, I think it was 300.
300.
Yeah.
Okay.
300, and what do you have there now?
42.
42, okay. So you got 42 right now, and you're going to go up another couple hundred.
Obviously, John, as you know, that absorption will be rather gradual and over a period of time. It's not just going to happen overnight.
We hope not. No, I understand that, of course.
We hope so.
Well said.
From a classroom point of view, we were looking long term. We wouldn't expect any additional classrooms beyond this. So this addition right here in the middle might not happen for 5 or more years.
Yeah. Right. So I just want to reiterate that the issue of access is an important one. There's a significant population yet to come to the site. I think Granite Knolls, I don't think has been utilized to its full potential quite yet, and I may be corrected, but I don't think so. So those things have to be taken into consideration, and I think that's an important set of items that need to be gone through so that the town is certain that this operates in conjunction with Granite Knolls in a safe manner.
We completely agree. We can't have a couple of hundred staff and a couple of hundred students and not have this operating safely. And you know that, and I think we've made that clear along the way. One of the reasons the site inspection will be valuable is for it to be clear how the two sites can work together. And John, one of the things that, if the town ultimately agreed that this was a suitable modification, we will memorialize this with reciprocal easements in favor of the town over our side and on the town's property in favor of this site, because otherwise we're creating a prescription for a problem in the future. So if we decide this works, we need to nail that down.
Thank you.
Well, glad the school is growing. Good to see you back again. And I look forward to the site visit.
So I know David asked, sorry, David, go ahead.
We would love to have the site visit, and all kidding aside, we did not have a lot of public participation last time. There was some, but I would think that our public information session, since it really is just an amendment, would be fairly discreet, but that's up to the board. The Kofflers would like us to get this off the ground and going, and the rest is obviously up, Rich, to you and the board.
Robin, how much do we have on the meeting of the 12th so far?
You have 4 public hearings scheduled.
Oh, Lord.
One is the French subdivision, which had no one talk tonight, so that'll probably be quick. Correa, Foothill will have people that want to talk, and so will the Taco Bell.
So doesn't sound too terrible if the back end of the meeting isn't too crazy. What's the thought of the board?
I think we should have it.
Yeah, I think we should. Most of the opposition the first time around was not really about the school. It was more about the heliport, right?
That's correct.
I mean, the
exactly.
helipad.
Yes.
Helipad.
All right, David, so you'll be ready for the meeting on the 12th?
Yes.
You sure?
I don't think there's any question.
Okay. Very nice presentation.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time.
Good to see you all. Everybody stay well. Did you set a date for the site inspection so the Kofflers and the team are aware?
Yeah, Robin will get that.
Okay.
The date I'm probably looking at is the Saturday, so April 10th.
Got it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Everybody have a great night.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Next on the agenda, we have a large-scale solar power generation system at Shrub Oak Plaza. This is a discussion of a special permit. It's a continuation. Locations 1426 East Main Street in Shrub Oak. Is the applicant here?
Yes, can you hear me? This is Julia Mattheosa with EPA.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Sorry about that. I wasn't able to unmute.
No problem.
Good evening, everyone. So this is now the 3rd time, I believe, that we're discussing this project. So last time we were in front of the board, we received some comments about the location of the solar canopies. We tried our best to address those. We've now moved them to a different location on the property, which I'm hoping the board will be more amenable to. So I will go ahead and share my screen so I can show that to you. Robin, it doesn't look like, oh, there it is. It just appeared. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're joined twice. That's why.
Okay, are you able to give permission to both? I'm not sure why I'm joined twice.
Oh, sorry. I think I just removed the wrong one. Okay.
Ah, yes, I've got it now. Thank you. All right. Is everyone able to see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Great. So we have a couple of options for the site plan that I actually wanted to present and just get some feedback on, and then we can move forward with whichever the board prefers. So the first option we have, which I'll call 1A, let's say. So as you can see, we've eliminated the canopy, the long canopy that was originally in front of the building has been completely eliminated. We've moved it to the back behind the building, and the board may be aware, I believe we had talked about it last time, that beneath one section of where that canopy number 4 is shown, there's actually a couple of dumpsters back there right now. So we're proposing to make this in-cut area of concrete to move the dumpsters to this other area and then cover that span with a canopy. So I call this 1A. You'll notice we have an option 1B that is very similar, except that this canopy number 4 is now 1 row wider. So it's just going to be a little bit larger than an option 1A. 1B is actually EcoG's preferred option to move forward. But we do recognize that this area back here is a wetlands area. So the board may be opposed to us adding additional concrete in that area. If that is the case, we do have another option, which I'll show now, which is option 2, which would essentially, again, we would still have a canopy 4 back behind the building. It would be twice as wide. So the other canopies are 3 modules, 3 rows of modules. Canopy 4 would be 6 rows of modules. And it would be shorter to allow for continued use of the dumpsters where they are currently located. And that would be to avoid having the added concrete back in the wetlands area. And also just to show the board what this would look like now, since there were concerns of visuals from the street and from neighboring properties. So we did prepare some additional renderings just without that front-facing canopy. So you can see here, driving down the road, they would hardly be visible. Again, right at the entrance to the building, you may be able to see the canopy on the side of the building, but again, very minimal visual impact. And then from within the parking lot, of course, there would be no canopy facing the street. There would just be the canopies right across from the building, covering those few parking spaces. So those are the plans that we've prepared. Again, we do firmly believe that a project of this nature with parking lot canopies adds other benefits. As I mentioned last time, this includes the installation of EV chargers, which we plan to do on site. It is an added amenity for anyone going to the shopping plaza because they do get covered parking. And we think it's a great way to make a visible sort of green initiative without involving covering too much green space or using areas that could otherwise be utilized. The parking lot use won't be impacted. If anything, it'll be an amenity for the parking lot. So I think I'll stop it there. I'm happy to go back to any of the site plans if any of the board members would like to discuss one option over another. But I am hoping that we can come to some sort of consensus and the board will be happier with one of these that we've proposed rather than what we showed you last time.
I want to thank you for these options. They certainly take into account my concerns on the streetscape that we raised last time. Could you show me where the wetland delineation is in the back?
Yes. Can you see my cursor as I'm pointing here?
Yes, I can.
Yes. This line here is the wetlands. We had a surveyor go out and stake these. So I don't know if there's some process to sort of verify them, but this is what we have marked out on the property.
Okay, so that's the wetlands, and any improvements that are on the site are in the buffer. And so there's really, in my mind, if you go to option 2, that one seems to be a very good compromise in my mind, and it also minimizes any disturbance to that wetland area. Am I right? There doesn't seem to be anything going in there. It's just going to overhang it a little bit.
Yes, that is correct. I should point out the posts of the canopies themselves are these little black dots. So the post will be outside of the wetland itself. It will be in the buffer, and then this is just an overhang, correct?
Julia, do you have any renderings from either of the side streets?
That's what I was going to ask.
No, we do not. And the reason for that being that we did hear some feedback from the board last time that these dumpsters back here were a bit of a nuisance. I don't know if the board feels strongly about that, but we did not do the renderings from this side because looking from over here, you would essentially just see dumpster if they were to stay in place. We would be happy to do the rendering from that side. We just didn't think it was necessary given the location of these.
And how about from the other side?
Looking at the other canopies on this side, you mean?
No, the canopies on the, I guess it's the south side.
Yes, I believe we do. Let me check here.
Is there any tree cutting proposed with this option too?
Yes, there is. We would need to remove a few trees behind canopies 1, 2, and 3. And I also believe there are a couple that are where canopy 4 would be overhanging that we would need to remove.
Is there a proposed landscaping plan?
No, we do not have a landscaping plan. If the board feels that we should include one, we certainly will.
Robin, is there any way to share the original site plan approval?
Yes.
Is that possible?
This is from 1999.
So on the, can you, any way to zoom in on that? Sorry.
So that's flipped over from what we were just looking at.
It is.
The conservation easement.
This line here.
That's the easement?
Yes.
And that area where the transformer pad and the buried LP tank, what does that show?
This?
Yeah, is there anything proposed in that area that you know of?
Well, this was a fenced-in play area.
Was that
was
after
already
this?
moved, wasn't it, John?
Yeah, I believe it was.
What happened to the water course?
Part of it was, if you go to the next plan, you'll see that part of it was piped and part of it should remain existing,
Over here.
open, yeah.
Do we have an easement over that too? Is that ours? No.
No, I don't think so.
Wouldn't the, where we're talking about where the solar array would go is at 6 o'clock on this drawing, in those, where the entrance comes off New Road. That's where the dumpsters are, right there.
Right.
Yeah.
So the solar array would cover those parking spots there, right? No additional or concrete?
That is so in the second option I presented, that's correct. It would not be covering the dumpsters. It would only be covering those parking spaces, and it would not require any additional concrete.
Is the plan that's shown here, is that what's out in the field? Is it compliant?
There's been some minor modifications. Generally, that site was in compliant. You see those those four diagonal spaces there, I don't think that they are there.
No, that's where the play area went.
That's where the play area is. Generally, this is in compliance, but I think that where the garbage enclosure is, if you do the second option, you will have some columns and some panels over the naturalized area, correct, Julia?
The columns will not, the posts themselves will be within the concrete area. There will be overhang of the panels into that back area.
Right. So you're not talking about doing the double layer, the double row in order to maintain the area for the garbage, right?
Sorry, I'm not sure I'm understanding.
No, she said it has to be double wide to include the garbage area.
Right.
Yeah.
So if it was double wide, it would be, in other words, twice as wide as the spaces there.
Correct, right. So the columns would be in the middle at the, if you're pulling into the space at the front of the space, and it would overhang on both sides.
At the curb line, essentially. You'll have one row of columns to take that whole wide array?
Correct.
Okay. I just have another question about your heights. If you could explain why at the lowest part from underneath you are showing 14 feet. Why is that necessary?
Yes, that is typically what we've seen as necessary for fire department clearance in the event that a fire department vehicle would need to drive under these for whatever reason. The 14 feet is typically what we've seen as the minimum clearance that they require for safety.
I'm not sure that they would, so I think it would be wise to ask the fire board about that, because if you could lower the height, I think it would be helpful.
Okay, sure. We can certainly reach out to them, or is that something that the board will refer us?
We'll refer it over.
Does the tree cutting get to the level of the tree board? Do we know?
Well, we're going to have to get a count of the number of trees that need to be removed. I think, first of all, I think if you're selecting the double row, this one that we're looking at now, PV 100, option 2, right?
Hmm.
So I think you need to, from that, determine the number of trees that need to come out from there, and then that'll provide the answer.
So I will say in our original proposal, it had been about 30 trees, but that was counting all of the ones along East Main Street, which will now stay in place. So I would think it would certainly be less than that. My best guess would be about 15.
As Aaron Bach said, I think we all appreciate that the canopies were moved off Main Street. And I'm sure, as you can understand, I'm sure you've been out there multiple times, this really is a very far cry from what the area is.
Mm-hmm.
This would be something very, very different than what's look and feel of the area. And I think, certainly option 2, I think, is better than the other ones. But, you really have to pay some mind to how these things are going to be screened, at least from the bottom up. I know, obviously, over, you want the direct sunlight, but from below, I think it really looks very industrial. And I know some of the screening, even though we don't want to see them cut, up front has aged over the 21 years that this building has been in place, or since its approval. It was just my quick thoughts. I don't know if any other members of the board have any thoughts.
I think we're fortunate in that the placement of the arrays not on the roof are on the north side of the building. The road is to the north of that. So if you screen on the back, on New Road, you're not going to impact the sunlight that falls on those panels.
Yeah.
So I think there can be some aggressive screening there to along New Road. I'm not at all concerned about the screening on the other side by the shopping center as much.
No. Who knows what's going to happen in that area down the road?
I think we're fortunate in the layout of this. Once we move them off of East Main Street, you've got a northern road that you can pretty well screen without worrying about impacting the effectiveness of the panels.
Yeah, it's I think it's a little bit lower. I know like the block 3 is much lower than the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm sure there's a way to accomplish that. And I do know if those pipes are not ours, there's no easement. I've seen issues out there when it rains heavy. I'm just wondering if that's operational. But I was going to suggest another site visit, but this is probably one we could drive through on our own if we want.
So we're going with 2?
Certainly looks like the better of the options in my eyes.
Sure.
I do think there needs to be aggressive screening though, and I think that's got to get looked at.
Yes, we do have an arborist who is working on the tree inventory for us. He was going to make some recommendations for screening of a limited height, so that at that lower end of the canopies, it wouldn't exceed the height of those, and it would just sort of be grazing with the height of those, and that's what we'll likely propose. But we're waiting for his feedback. So.
Okay, and again, an arborist is someone who deals with trees. This might call for someone who is more of a landscape person,
sure,
or a landscape architect,
mm-hmm.
especially with the way that the area has been developed. I do appreciate all the changes you made as we spelled out at our second meeting.
Sure, of course.
All right, so we'll each take a ride through. Anything else we need to talk about with this application? John, Jim?
Well, we're going to have to take now a look at the wetlands. So
yeah,
we'll work with Julia to get all the necessary steps taken care of. One of which is going out and looking at the flags, and then getting those. Are these flags been picked up by surveyor, Julia?
Yes.
Okay. We'll get the
John,
flags.
when you're out, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Just accepted by the town and get a wetland permit together.
And when you're out there, if you could check, and I'll walk by myself, but I know there's issues in there with stormwater, and it could be due to that pipe.
Okay.
John T., what would the issues of the wetlands be? I mean, if the columns are going into existing concrete, and the overhangs are, they're not doing anything. What's the issue of the wetlands?
Well, they may be going into existing concrete, but nevertheless, that is a excavation that you'll have to do within the wetland buffer. So just really, it's just a matter of following the letter of the law that you need to get a permit for that.
Sure.
Maybe an easy lift since there's really no impact of the wetlands. I'm not yet certain that you're not going to have some of those columns on the other side of the curb line, which you start to get into that. But I don't anticipate that the disturbance in that regard will be heavy. But you also have to we have to remind ourselves that you'll get some shading there, which will change the flora that's underneath it.
Right.
Not to make it more complicated, but that's certainly something that will happen.
All right, so we'll take a run through there, take a look. And Julie, on your end, you know what we're looking for?
Yes, so we'll work on that landscaping plan. We'll do that with option 2 in mind, and we'll make sure to have that ready for you. And then, yes, we'll work with John for the wetlands, and we'll get some additional renderings from that side of the property if that would be beneficial.
And we'll follow up with the fire department.
Well,
yes.
Why don't we work on the landscaping as well, Julia?
Yeah, I have that on my list to work with the landscape architect on this.
And us too.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
One more thing. If we could, do we have clear elevation since you're considering elevations from that western view of the building and the rooftop installation? Can we get a sense of what that's going to look like from the road level, so to speak?
We do have those. I'm happy to share them. But that roof of the building is surrounded by, at a minimum, a 4-foot parapet on all sides. and the panels will not be more than 12 inches off the top of the roof. So they'll be covered by the parapet.
Okay, not necessary then from the side. Thank you.
Sure.
Jim,
Thank you very much,
you're
Julia.
muted.
Is a tree mitigation plan going to be needed?
That's to be determined.
Or can that be incorporated into the landscape plan?
I think we're gonna have to see how many trees they're taking down first.
Yeah, there's going to be some mitigation required, whether it be limited to wetland. And it can also be trees. We'll take a look at that as well. But it can be incorporated into one plan, I think, Jim, a landscape plan and a mitigation plan.
And there may be a lot of opportunity in that area in the rear for removal of invasives and everything else. I
Yes.
would imagine, right?
Correct. I think that's right.
It's a mess back there.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Nice job. Thanks,
Good night.
Julie.
Thank you very much.
Be safe.
You too.
Okay, next in the agenda, we have 712 Kitchewan Road. This is a town board referral. Address is the same, and we have Cuddy and Fader here with us, I believe.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Morning.
Taylor, the law firm of Cuddy and Fader, as the chairman mentioned. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for putting us on your agenda tonight. We know it's been a long agenda, so we'll try and be brief in our presentation, and you may remember us. We are here tonight to discuss Tracer's minor site plan amendment and their zoning amendment that relates to their existing office and flex space. Tonight, I am joined by the property owner, Stephen Spiro, who is the president of Tracer, as well as Michael Cates, who is collectively Kitchewan Barnes LLC, the applicant that's before you. I'm also joined by the project engineers, Mike Bodorf of Hudson Land Design and Peter Wintermantle, who is the project architect from REA Siegel Architect. As the board may recall, this project was before the town board and it was on referral to your board in 2017 in connection with a proposed zoning amendment at that time, as well as site plan approval that are both handled by the town board for this property because it's the transitional zoning district. Until 2017, and Mike will just bring up Exhibit C just so we have it on the screen.
Which person?
Oh, sorry, Michael Bodendorf of Hudson
Permission.
Land Design. And while Michael's bringing it up on the screen, I can just go through some general details as he'll put forth the site plan in a few minutes. Until 2017, the property was formerly known as the Brooklyn Botanic Garden property and the Kitchewan Institute. It's a 14.7 acre property. You can see now on the screen. And it was back then in 2017 classified in the R200 zoning district. And it was improved by an office building and parking areas, as well as the ruins and foundation of a large greenhouse and storage building on the property. Mike, you can just scroll through. From some of the prior uses on the property included a research laboratory, a not-for-profit office, laboratories, conference room, and publishing. There's actually even a pharmaceutical research on the site involving animal testing on rodents, as well as a conference center and think tank. So there's been a lot in the history of the property. To the north of the property, there's the 207-acre Kitchewan Preserve. You can see that outlined in blue, which is part of the Westchester County Park System. And then as we scroll through to the next slide, we're about a mile and a half from IBM, where we're located. Access to the site is provided off of New York State Route 134 on the left-hand side there, by a driveway that's actually an easement over county property. And it also has the county also has a right of first refusal over this property. As we mentioned, the applicant recently appeared before the town board in 2017, where they did zone this in the T zoning district for the for-profit office and flex space now utilized by Tracer, and it was brought onto the tax rolls. The town board at that time granted the site plan amendment and the zoning. Mike, if you can now just bring up Exhibit B. We will shift back to Exhibit C in just a minute. Since 2017, Tracer did make a lot of changes. This is the old interior that you're looking at in the space. If you just scroll through there, Mike, you'll actually see you may have been part of a site visit out to the site back then. There was actually a tree growing through the entryway of the entrance to the lobby there on the left-hand side. So Tracer's done a lot of work, and Stephen and Michael have done a lot of work to improve not only the building. Mike, if you scroll through down to probably the third page, keep going there. That's the old lab rooms where they did the animal testing. Keep going, Mike. There we are. And so they've done significant upgrades to the interior of the building and made it more the flow of the space, just to again provide indoor and outdoor areas for, again, co-working space and allowing to make sure it really fits Tracer's needs. They also did some improvements, and this is where I'll ask you, I apologize, Mike, to switch back to Exhibit C, to the county park entrance. Many of you may have been out to Kitchewan Preserve in the last few years. You've seen the improvements to the parking areas, the signage, and the general access to the property. The reason why we're before you this evening with all that history, and I'll go all the way to the end, please, Mike. The reason why we're before you this evening is in Tracer going out to review a addition that was proposed back in 2017 to the building, determined that based on their operations, the pandemic, among other operational needs for the site, needed to slightly enlarge the already approved addition. So this was a previous addition. In this location, you see the old greenhouse ruins of the building and the foundation of that. The 2017 approval was within the footprint of that existing storage building, but when they went to build it, it was determined it wasn't going to be sufficient for their needs, and so we're before you for a minor amendment related to that. The changes that would be before you would be a Type 2 action under seeker, but because we require de minimis changes to the zoning bulk requirements, because the bulk table for those in the transitional district, it is set literally to the lines of the existing footprints. So it could be 350 feet, it could be 297 feet. It's truly to the corners of each of the points of the building and improvements on the site. That is just the design of that of the transitional district. So we're seeking very small changes to two of the setbacks and increasing the coverage ever so slightly. Just for the benefit of the board, we did appear at your conservation board on St. Patrick's Day. To the board's credit, they were all very well festive in their attire. So kudos to the conservation board. I didn't get the memo. I just showed up in my suit, but kudos to the conservation board for that. They did provide a letter to the town board that they see no adverse environmental impacts for the project and recommend that it move forward. So again, we know you have a busy agenda, but I will ask our engineer, Mr. Bodendorf, to briefly review with you his site plan, and then our architect can show you his rendering of the revised building. And again, we've also met with the neighbors here, the Friends of Kitchewan, as we call them. And actually that's their name, so I can't say that we call them that. They call them that. And they worked into building this design to be more in line with the existing structure and to help keep it less visible given the topography and just the overall layout of the building. So with that, Mr. Bodendorf.
Yes, good evening. Mike Bodendorf, Hudson Land Design Engineers for the applicant. What we're looking at here is the overall site plan, and this little checked hatch area is the proposed building addition. I'll let the architect talk about the building elevations and interior design. I'll just zoom up on the building addition ever so slightly here. You can see the old footprint through this round hatched area. So you see that the building does increase in size towards the west slightly. The increase will result in about a little over 1,000 square feet of impervious. We have about a little over 6,000 square feet of disturbance to install the building. So we have prepared a erosion sediment control SWIP. And the SWIP will provide erosion sediment controls during construction, and also provisions for roof runoff to be brought back to a sheet flow condition so it won't cause any downstream erosion control problems or anything like that. That's generally it from the engineering and stormwater side. I could turn it over to the architect.
Thanks, Mike. Pete, if you could just show the board the elevations and the change for the revised addition.
Yep, great. Yeah, thank you, Taylor. Thanks, Mike. Yep, I'm Peter Wintermantel, an architect with REA Siegel's office, the architecture firm working with the client. And then, yep, Mike, thanks. That's what we want there. So, as Taylor had said, that previously this addition was approved, and it was a gable addition, so it was approximately 26 feet to the peak of the gable. We've actually changed the design to lower the building. So right now the flat roof that we see in those images is about 19'8". So the overall height of the building is dropping down We've also broken the building up a little bit to kind of break up the mass and make it read a little bit better with the existing building that's there. So what we're looking at now is just the proposed renderings across the top of the screen there. And material-wise, we're looking at cedar board siding. The brown would just be a stained cedar, and then the green is painted. All the windows then would just be the black metal trim, and then the curved roof that we're looking at there is just a galvanized metal roof. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like me to speak to there, but it's pretty straightforward here. We're just increasing the floor plan slightly, but bringing that height down a little bit, I think helps, and then breaking up that facade as well, I think works well with the existing conditions.
Thank you, Peter. And for the board members that are familiar with this location, and the bend that goes around from the south and the west sides, I mean, the building is it's set back hundreds of feet from both of these locations, and the topography and the existing trees and the additional screening that the applicant installed from the prior approval provides significant screening existing. But again, we believe the design is a better design overall and really meets Tracer's need. I know we've taken a lot of your time this evening. I would ask Mr. Chairman, Mr. Spiro, just give you a little bit of background about Tracer for those of you that don't know. He'll give you the 1-minute stump speech just about what Tracer does on the site, so you know who's your neighbor and what they do here in Yorktown. Stephen is able to unmute. Oh, there he is. You're muted, Stephen.
Thank you. Thank you, Taylor. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, board. It's nice to be here tonight. Thank you for the time. So just a quick overview on Tracer. We've been in 712 Kitchewan since 2018. We love being there. It's a beautiful building, and we've been spending a lot of time not only working on the inside of the building, but tending to a lot of the beautiful species of trees that are on the property. We actually have a very rare Mongolian sequoia tree on the property that we've been taking care of, and some other magnolias and things that were planted originally by the Brooklyn Botanical Garden. So it's a beautiful, beautiful property, and we'd love to give you a tour if you ever have a chance to come down. So my company, Tracer, we are a bunch of engineers, really, that develop consumer products that are generally sold into the photography space, and so a lot of wall decor type products. All of our mass production is done down in Kentucky in the Louisville area, and also in the Lexington area. But in the New York facility, what we do is really two things. One of them, we do all of our design work there. So we have engineers doing design work. And then we do printing of consumer images onto the products that we then ship direct to consumer. So we make large printed canvases with family photos on it, and we print on glass, and we print on various different substrates. It usually has a personalized image that we ship direct to consumer. And thankfully, our business is growing. We've had a really good run for the last few years, and we're very grateful to have had actually a successful year during the pandemic. While a lot of people were home, I think they started redecorating, buying exercise equipment and drinking booze, but we benefited from the redecorating side of things. And wall decor saw a little bit of a lift in overall growth. So our company is expanding, and we just need a little bit more expansion space, mostly for storage, but also for just shipping and receiving and other things that our company needs. We moved into the building, and we thought we would never fill up the space, and now we're literally busting out at the seams. So that's why we were looking to get a slight increase in the overall footprint.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, beautiful looking building. Looks like it's very well thought out. The before and after pictures of the existing building, I think, scream to the type of work that you did out there. Looks very nice. Any comments from the board?
I think you may have answered this already, but the expanded area in that former greenhouse space is going to be mostly storage.
It's going to be storage and shipping and receiving, and we may put some cutting equipment in there, not like die cutting, but just like a CNC cutting machine to cut some of our large format pieces. And we haven't decided exactly how we're going to move things around, but we may have some of our inkjet printers that are essentially a large desktop inkjet printer, but they're roll fed. And we may move that into there. We haven't quite decided how we're going to move things around, but it's really primarily to accommodate our growing direct-to-consumer business, which is digital printing, inkjet printing, and then stretching canvas on a wood frame. The wood frames are already pre-made, so we're not mailing them or anything like that in the building. So it's really a one-off business for products that are shipped direct-to-consumer.
Right, and that door is for moving the product out.
Yeah, so oftentimes when we get raw material, we'll get either large, pallets of corrugate for boxes or large pallets of, print media. Typically it comes on a pallet. So we'll offload it from usually a smaller truck that has a lift gate, and then we have a lift jack and we'll just pull it through that door.
I'm in a meeting.
Nice spot to be. I was all
Very
for
nice.
the application when you guys came.
Yeah,
first time.
When I say we love being there, I really mean it. It's just we feel lucky to be there every day we're there.
Great.
And we have barbecues every Wednesday during the summer. So if you're ever around, please come by around lunchtime.
Any other comments from the board?
Visit. No,
Sorry.
a Wednesday site visit. No.
Any other comments, concerns?
No.
John?
No, I don't.
All right, Jim?
Just procedurally, this is just a minor amendment to an already approved plan.
Yes, this is before the town board for a minor site plan amendment, and because it's the transitional zone, it is a zoning petition to revise the bulk tables that are in the transitional district.
Okay, so is it a type 1 action then?
It's an unlisted action.
An unlisted? Okay. So there's no need to squabble about lead agency then?
The town board has declared its intent to serve as lead agency for this application.
Okay. So in that case, the planning board should respond. They have no objection to the town board serving as lead agency.
Great.
We appreciate that.
Hey.
Thank you.
All right, so we can get that letter, John?
Yes.
Thank you very
Twofold,
much.
right? Twofold. We have no problem with them declaring themselves lead agency, and we don't really have any planning issues either.
No.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
You got it.
Excellent. Good luck with the project.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay,
We'll
be
see you
safe.
all on Wednesday.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you.
Keep growing.
Will do.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All right.
Take care.
Take care.
All right, next on the agenda, we have 2572 Gregory Street, Collier. This is also a town board referral. Location is the same. We have the applicant.
Yes. Hello?
Hello.
Can you unmute me? I unmuted myself.
I hear
I
you.
hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay. Well, good evening. It's Joel Greenberg. I'm the architect for Mr. and Mrs. Collier. We're also here. We also have our landscape architect, Jerry Barrett, and we have our wetlands inspector, Stephen Coleman. Let's just get this on the screen. All right. Robin, what did I do wrong?
What do you want to share? Which program? Doesn't look like you have anything open.
Hold on.
Do you have this folder here at the bottom with?
Oh boy.
Joel, I have my site plan if you'd like me to share.
Yeah, put that up. Yeah.
Oh, hold on. I gotta switch people.
Host disabled participant sharing. Says.
Another one felled by technology.
Robin, can you enable the?
I did.
Try again.
John had Robin, or Robin had John before as a cat. You seen that?
Yeah.
The attorney? Oh my God. Oh boy.
Okay, did that help, Joel?
It's coming up.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. All right, this is located on Gregory Street. It's down toward the end of Gregory Street. There are houses on either side of us, behind us, and across the street. As you can see from the plan that Joe just put up here, there's a wetland which is described, which is located over here, and then there's another wetland in the back of the property. Fortunately, it's a very wooded wetland, and we're obviously taking down as few trees as possible because the front, we are not planning on doing anything. The only area that we're going to be crossing the wetland is this little triangle right over here, which is about 300 square feet, and that's so we can get our driveway to come into the house, which will have a parking area or a turnaround over here, a garage, and this will be the house over here. The good thing is we're taking out this wetland here, but we are adding in this wetland over here, which is probably 50% more than the wetland that we're eliminating. So we're actually having it on the plus side. As you can see, there are numerous trees in this whole area around here, which we're going to keep. Maybe, Steve, maybe you want to just describe the wetlands, and then we'll go back to Jerry's drawing to show you the landscaping.
Sure. The wetland is actually one complete system. It's a remnant forested wetland that starts in the front and wraps around on the northern side and continues to the rear. And, it's a fairly typical, red maple, American elm type wooded wetland. And, it merges into a stream system in the rear that travels across the property. The entire site, other than a small triangle, which you can see right in the middle of where the garage is outside of the buffer. So the entire property is encumbered either in wetland or wetland buffer area minus its small triangle. And, with the wetland itself, it's a fairly intact system. There's a good tree, moderate tree canopy in the front and, good diversity of vegetation throughout the wetland. In the rear, there's a little bit more evidence of some disturbance, and we see a little bit more invasive species that have come in, such as Phragmites and multiflora rose. But overall, it's a good functioning system, that travels, through that area. There has been some disturbance from the prior to the neighbor to the south. There was a drainage system put in that directs water from the wetland, continues to the property, and then it was directed via piping all the way to the rear and outlets into the wetland in the rear of the property. And that does appear to have impacted the wetland a little bit in terms of the hydrology flow, but it's still managed to function pretty well.
Jerry, if you want to just switch to the landscape plan, we'll just go over the landscape that's proposed.
Sure. So when we got involved with this, I went out with Steve and we had a look at the site and talked with Joel and Marty about it and the owners. And Joel said we decided the best place to come in with the driveway would be down on the south side. We did have to flip this portion of the wetland here, and we've decided that we would recreate it. So we're taking out about 300 square feet here and adding about 500 square feet here.
we're going to grade this thing down. This area right here will get graded down to the level of the wetlands, so the hydrology will remain similar. It'll require a low boulder wall, less than 2 feet in this area. We will have a pipe, 8-inch pipe in that wall that will connect to that catch basin that Steve talked about, just to take overflow and send it to the way it's going now. You can see that the driveway profile, it's a pretty flat site. We come down to a low point in this area right here, and then it comes back up, and it pretty much follows the grade that's there. We do show the erosion controls. We do show our grading limit line. In that dashed line, we show that we're having our silt fence it'll essentially wrap the entire property. We'll have our tracking pad up in the front in our soil piles. So that's how the layout worked. And then what we did was we talked about how can we, revegetate this site. And what we decided to do was what we noticed, and Steve pointed out in the back, there was quite some invasive material showing up in the back, but we're not going to go back there. The idea was to site the house midway between the back wetland and the front wetland, and provide a modest backyard for the kids to play on, and a modest front yard, to frame the house. And then the rest is going to stay pretty much natural. But what we noticed in this area in the front, that it was pretty much devoid of understory in here. I don't know whether the deer have been in there and chopping away, but it was pretty much devoid of that. So we thought what we could do in this wetland is we could put in clumps of native shrubs, and we would do masses. So we have all kinds of berry producing shrubs in here. And then what we have is big masses of ferns that these will spread. And the idea is to create kind of a natural understory, good for habitat and for foraging. And then once that's all done, then there'll be a native wetland seed mix put in. So this area, I think, will be quite lovely. Once it grows in, it'll be quite a nice feature on the property. There's also planting proposed along the driveway. There's evergreen screen and deciduous trees along both edges, both the north and the south, to provide some buffering and some privacy for the new home, and also to buffer the neighbors to the north and the south. So that's what you're seeing in here. And then we have more customary foundation plantings along the house to dress up the house and frame the house. So we think we think because we're going to keep many of these trees in the front, and I think that when this house is built, it's an established neighborhood, and I think this is going to look like another established house in the neighborhood, because you're going to get a filtered view of it. It's going to be set back from the road. It's going to be viewed through canopies of trees and shrubs. So I think it'll be a nice addition to the neighborhood.
Thank you, Jerry. Also, I might add, if you haven't seen it yet, this project started, I obviously filed it with the town engineer some time ago, and then it was referred to the Conservation Board. And back on March 4th, the Conservation Board said the Conservation Board appreciates the reestablished wetland and the screening for the neighbors. The board feels mitigation has been satisfied and recommends the project move forward. So we went before the town board a couple of weeks ago. They referred it to you, and also they set a public hearing, I believe, for either April 5th or April 6th. We have a public hearing. We've sent out the notices, and they also recommended. Fortunately, both Dan Ciarcia and John were there at the meeting. John Tegeter, and I've spoken to Dan about it, and he just has a few notes that he wants to be taken from the landscape plan and put on our site plan, which we're going to do, and then any comments that you have, so we can be ready for the town board public hearing, as I said, the first week of April. And if there's any questions, we will certainly attempt to answer them.
Any questions from the board?
So the whole site's in the buffer or the wetland, except for a small triangle.
That's correct.
And to what extent all the work that's been going on over there, and the trees that have been taken out, and all the wood and the logs and everything, the disturbance that's occurred already, what were there permissions given to do that, or?
The only thing that was done is that the previous town engineer had requested some testing, which we did, and we had our site engineer, Jack Corral, design the storm tech system for the drainage for the driveway and for the house. But aside from the backhoe going in and out, there was no other disturbance. Again, we did not take any trees down to dig the test holes. So I honestly don't know of any major work that was done. There was no major work done on the property. And the only thing we did was
there were trees cut up and removed.
John, this is Chris. I'm the property owner.
How you doing, Chris?
Good, thank you. The only work that's been done over there is trees that have come down in previous storms. I cut up and brought those pieces, those logs that you see over there out to the street. And a couple of people have been taking that for firewood.
So as Chris said, there's no trees were taken down. These are trees that had already fallen over. And as I said, the only work that was done was requested by the town engineer.
Chris has also cleaned up quite a bit of debris. The neighbors had taken it upon themselves to use it as a little bit of a dump. But I know when I was out there, Chris was actively cleaning it up. So I think he's really done a good job out there.
Which is all well and good. The only thing I asked was what kind of permissions were granted to go in there to be in a wetland and a wetland buffer.
I just told you, John, the town engineer requested, and the only work that we did in there was what the town engineer had requested. The previous town engineer, not Dan. So we did not go there without permission.
He requested that you go in and take the trees out and clean everything.
No, we didn't take any trees down.
I didn't say down, Joel. I said take the trees out. We had another application a couple of weeks ago. Somebody went in to clean up their property and dragged out all the old trees and motors and everything else. And they were in a wetland and a wetland buffer. And he did not have permission to do it. So I'm bringing it to the board's attention that the same type of activity may have gone on here if permission was not granted and wetland permits were not issued. That's what I'm saying. So if there were permits issued or instructions given, I think we should see the paperwork on that. And then we can discuss what goes on with a site that's virtually completely encumbered by a wetland or a wetland buffer, albeit served by municipal water and sewer, which I'm assuming it is.
Yes, it is served by municipal water and sewer. Well, I think, John, I don't know what you saw that happened on a particular piece of property, but as Chris said, all we were doing was just cleaning up. It's obviously it's been vacant for many, many years, and unfortunately, people use it as a dumping ground. And when we went in to do the testing that the town engineer requested, I guess at that particular time it made sense, as long as we had the manpower there, to take out what people had thrown in there and what had fallen down. There's nothing done that was done to destroy the wetlands. I think both Jerry and Steve will attest to that. And I think the plan that Jerry has proposed is a tremendous improvement. And as he said, also the fact that the entire wetland, which is in the front, is very heavily wooded. And in effect, even though this house is going to be built, far back from the road, it's going to once it's finished, it'll look like it's been there for many years because the whole front has not been, denuded, so to speak, and cleaned out. And I think to Mr. Collier's credit, he's been very careful what he's done, and I think that this is something that I think the town will be proud of. The Conservation Board actually had no comments except some compliments for the proposal, and basically forwarded it on to the town board.
Great.
Any other comments from the board? So it sounds like the question here, at least on our end, as John correctly identified, we had an application in front of us at our last meeting or 2 meetings ago, where someone had, sounds like, so from what you're describing, John, similar type of work. So is it appropriate that we do a site visit on this before acting? Or have John go out?
Well, I know what it looks like, but it might be a good idea for other people to take a look. I do love the idea of recreating.
we had to have the excavator come in to dig the test holes for the stormwater permit. There was a tree. I'm trying to figure out how to describe it to you because my cursor obviously doesn't show up on the screen. Jerry, where's your cursor? Can you move it down to where the driveway is and then left? Left? A little bit
The
more
road?
right there. There's a tree that was down right there. That's what I cut up, and the logs you saw sitting by the street. We had the excavator come in pretty much the path of where the driveway was going to be, with the exception of that wetland area. He went in and where that catch basin is and around to get it back to where the house was. So that's what the cleanup was. And there's a lot of dumping along the fence line between the southern property border, where people had been, dumping grass clippings and leaves and branches for years and years. So I've been trying to clean up some of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I know, John, you're concerned, and I appreciate that, but I think as the homeowner, the owner of the property, everything he was doing there was to improve the situation, not adversely affect it. And as he said, the only tree was in this particular area over here, which is where the excavator had to come in to go around the existing wetland down over here and then come up over here. And we did some testing on this side of the house and on this side of the house. So all the testing was done outside of the wetland. Actually, in that particular case, it was some of it was in the buffer, and some of it was outside the buffer, the 100-foot buffer line. So I think that again, if that one tree that was dragged out and cut up, that's the only thing that was done. Everything else was done as per the town engineer's requests. And again, to repeat, this project was very carefully scrutinized by the Conservation Board, and they looked at the plan and the buffering that we're doing to give privacy both to the neighbors and to Mr. and Mrs. Collier on both the north and south ends. And I know I'm repeating myself, but the end result here is going to be something that is, for a difficult piece of property, I think what is going to be spent to improve it, improve the wetland, improve the landscaping, and on the overall project, I think it's something that once it's completed, it'll look like it's been there for a while, and the plantings, as Jerry said, will spread and grow, and I think it's going to wind up to be a site that the town will be very proud of.
Yeah, I actually personally caught the landscaper twice from adjoining properties dumping leaves and sticks and logs and stuff on the property. Yep. And we asked them to stop that, and we cleaned up a little bit of it.
All right, so we've heard all about the project. I think what John Kinkart is concerned about is the fair enforcement of the code. So if we have one applicant, and it sounds like they might have done the same thing, John, if what you're telling us is right, and they're being held to one standard, it's got to be equally applied. Is that what you're getting at, John?
Well, I don't know what went on in there. I don't know. As I say, people have permits to do things, and people have written permission to do things, and I don't know. I'm just saying that I saw work going on there. I think that this plan is going to be beautiful in terms of the enhancement of the wetland area. It's going to be a lot nicer than what's there now. It's kind of denuded swamp right now in parts, and certainly in the back even more so, and it wraps around through the cul-de-sac. This is on the other side of where we had the application come in for the townhouse from the old Prebeck subdivision. It's the same wetland, it's just the other side of it. So, we looked at that piece of land and it was very wet. And here we have an application where, someone's looking to, develop a site that is pretty much all wetland or wetland buffer. And, there's going to be, a bit of work done on a property if you're going to construct a house. So what goes on in there, it has to be carefully looked at, in my opinion, in terms of the surrounding areas. And, the work that has gone on already, even if it was just cleaning up crap that other people put in there over the years, or fallen trees or whatever, I think, we told the other guy he jumped the gun. He should have gotten the permission first and then gone in and done what he was going to do. So, no offense to you, Mr. Collier, and you may or may not be aware of, procedural issues in the town. I'm just saying that we have to be careful with these more sensitive sites. And, the town board is now asking for our opinion on what we think of things. And I think we need to be knowledgeable before we offer an opinion. That's all I'm saying.
If I could interject, as the wetland, scientist on the property, based on, the removal of the tree that had fallen and some of the debris consisting of, leaf litter and branches and twigs and other, debris from the adjoining property, I really don't feel that what Mr. Collier did is creating any functional impact to the wetland or creating any further degradation. If anything, it's going to actually result in an improvement because, removing the debris pile, that was present along that whole area will allow the sunlight to, get to the ground layer and allow, the plants to perform much better. So there's a provision in the wetland code for normal, routine ground maintenance. And I think in this case, I don't think Mr. Collier's gone overboard. I mean, it was a very sensible desire just to clean up the debris and, remove the tree for access.
So, Mr. Coleman, you've been to the site and inspected what was done?
Yes, I mean, I've been to the site, a few times to do the functional assessment and.
But after the cleanup?
I haven't seen it after the cleanup, but I do remember the debris piles, along that southern border, and it's something that I think any homeowner would do. And I really don't feel that it impacted the wetland. If anything, having the stockpile there was probably creating more impact in terms of, the site than, having it removed.
But you haven't seen the work?
I haven't seen the work since Mr. Collier did that.
And Mr. Barrett, have you seen the work done out there?
I have not, but I have a question, Mr. Chairman. Does the town code require a wetland permit to remove deadfalls? I know in other towns they do not, and I'm just wondering if your town requires a permit to remove deadfalls. You
broke up a little bit there.
The town attorney can assist us with that, perhaps.
I couldn't hear what you were saying at the end, though.
My question was, does the town wetland code require a wetland permit to remove deadfalls from a regulated area?
So I'd look to John or Jim for more specificity on that.
I would have to look into it and let you know.
In your experience in other municipalities, and I'm not trying to make a comparison, but isn't it allowed in many cases that deadfalls are something that can be removed? I don't know. I'm just asking the question.
Well, some communities are very much let nature take its course, and if something falls over, then they expect it to be left and let nature take its course. Others are a little bit more practical about maintaining the health of the system that's there. So I'd have to see exactly what our code says.
Thank you.
But I think what John Kincard is saying is that it was, again, I apologize, I haven't been by the site, but it sounds like there was machinery in this area assisting in the cleanup. So the application that came to us a few weeks ago, the guy had gone in with equipment and really just torn everything up. And I think that's what we're hearing might have been done there. And again, I haven't seen it, but I think that's what it's, what it's being equated to. John Taggart, have you been out?
Excuse me, Aaron, let me just answer that.
I'm not Aaron.
I have been out to the...
Mr. Greenberg.
I'm sorry.
You can let John Taggart answer first. Please.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
All right.
I have not yet been out to this site, no.
Okay.
All right, what I was going to say, Mr. Chairman, if I can say, I have been out to the site because I was there during the testing. And as far as I could see, the only thing, as Mr. Collier said, along the southerly border where the proposed driveway is, there was a fallen tree which was cut up and taken down, and also recent dumping, not from years ago, dumping of twigs and leaves and grass from one of the adjacent property owners. So all he did, he took the dead tree out and cut it up, also to allow the excavator to go along the driveway to get to the site where the town engineer wanted the testing. So in effect, all he did was take something that was dumped on the property recently and get rid of it. And as Mr. Coleman said, if anything, that helps the wetlands, because obviously getting rid of the debris and everything else allows the sun to get into that area and to allow the functioning of the wetland to function as it's supposed to. So I don't.
No one's disagreeing in the ecology and everything else you're talking about. But what John Kincard questioned was there permissions given. That's all. That's all he's asking. He's just asking if permission. We understand this is a very beautiful plan. There's obviously been a lot of care and thought from your professionals that went into this proposed plan. I think it's going to be beautiful. That being said, what John Kincard had brought up was there actions taken prior to any approvals that should have been looked at. Was this something that someone, and I'm not saying it's the case, but was there a lot of work done in there that shouldn't have been done before it was approved? Not saying that it's not going to be nice and it's beautiful, going to be beautiful. That's the question the man.
It already looks better. It already looks better than it did before. I have to.
I would go back to the wetlands code, because 178.9, number 7, reads removal, which is considered a permitted act, is removal of debris, leaves, dead or diseased vegetation that are obstructing the flow within a wetland or wetland buffer. I actually, in my profession, I represent a lot of municipalities as their wetland consultant, and I do have to say that most codes in the towns that I represent have a provision that allows for the removal, considered reasonable removal of, ground vegetation, trees that have fallen, anything that's kind of obstructing, as long as it's done usually without the use of heavy equipment, or that's done by hand. And in this case, Chris had done the work, by hand with the use of a chainsaw and removing the debris. So I would argue that I think it's consistent with your code.
Rich?
Well, go ahead, Aaron.
I think the issue that John raised is an issue of whether or not the wetlands code was violated by this applicant prior to these applications coming in, or even if not prior, it might have been contemporaneous, I don't know. But the question really is has something been done improperly without permits? I don't think that's easy for us to assess based upon everything I've been hearing, but we may be able to refer or recommend that this be referred to engineering or some other fact finder on behalf of the town. Go out there, figure out what happened, and see if something was done improperly that needs to be taken into account as the rest of this application is processed by the town board. Otherwise, we're not really helping the situation.
You're right.
If something has happened that needs to be called to their attention and taken into account, we should make some recommendation that some steps be taken to figure that out. I don't personally think my participation on a site visit would assist in that process necessarily, but there should be somebody in our town that can figure that out and say, yeah, I'm going to issue a violation and you need to mitigate for it, or there was no violation and the application can proceed without any additional mitigation.
We just need to be consistent as a board.
I agree. I don't have a problem with that. I just think we need to have the proper information before us from our sources.
It is an enforcement action, so we'll stop out there, take a look and see what's there. I guess one of the other circumstances is that my predecessor advised the applicant to do this, and quite frankly, it is a bit of a catch-22, because you can't really design a stormwater practice, or if there was a septic involved as a practical matter, you couldn't really design the whole project without knowing how big a septic system was going to be or the stormwater. So, you know, in that regard, it's sort of necessary to go in and do it. And apparently the applicant did it with the blessing of the engineering department. So, but I'll stop out there and take a look and make that part of my report on the application.
Yeah, can I meet you there and can we go look at this and square this away?
We could meet. I mean, I think it should be fairly self-explanatory, but I'm happy to do that.
I think it would be helpful if Mr. Collier was there, myself, because it sounds like there's back and forth between the engineering department and if the town engineer directed the owner to go out and do these things. Well,
I'm confident that what's been done is compliant with the wetlands code. I looked it up, personally, and saw that there's some maintenance provisions. I cut up the tree personally to allow the excavator to get in to dig the test holes that we needed to do the stormwater permit. I'm confident if you go out there and take a look at it, I'll explain to you what's been done, and I think you'll probably see that the work that I've done is part of the mitigation that's going to be done, not something that's detrimental to the project.
Yeah, and Mr. Collier, this is no attack of your integrity or what you did out there. Just procedurally in town. This has nothing to do with you personally. This is procedurally in town, the way the town does its work.
Understood. Understand that procedurally, I think what I did is okay. If it's not,
I get it. So what we're asking Mr. Town Engineer Dan Ciarci to do is go meet you out there. John Tegeter might want to tag along. And if there are no violations, does the board have any problems with the application that's permitted, that's shown in front of us?
No.
All right, so then if there are no violations out there and it's confirmed that Michael Quinn asked the applicant to go do what he got, and it's just a cleanup, then does the board give John the authority to go ahead and write a letter to the town board with no planning objectives to the application? That's one. And if they do come up with something, I guess we'd have to take a look at what happened out there. Does anybody have any issues with that?
None.
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
All right. So, Mr. Collier, you'll meet Dan Ciarci out there. Maybe John can tag along. They'll speak if there's no issues, as you said, and as Mr. Coleman has said. And Mr. Coleman, we appreciate your expertise in this matter. Then we'll get a letter to the town board saying we have no planning objections. Is that fair?
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and the board.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And if we don't see you before the holidays, enjoy and stay safe.
Best. Stay safe.
Well,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care. All right. One more. Yeah, Gregory Street's a hot topic tonight. 2678 Gregory Street, another town board referral. Address is the same. Gabe Senor. There he is.
Oh yeah, I'm wearing my spring shirt. First
very nice.
Shirt. I should have changed for the meeting, but I didn't. Anyway, so how you guys doing?
Good yourself.
So we've seen this. I believe you've seen this application before, or this plan before. This is across the street from a lot that we worked a subdivision, or a one-lot subdivision, or legalization last year. This is on the corner of the easterly corner of Granite Springs and Gregory. We're proposing to build a single-family house on this corner. Driveway is going to be as far from the corner as possible, straight in. We have our Coltec design here. We did perk tests and items under the original application. It is a wooded site. We are taking down about 24 trees, but we're not taking down any trees along the borderline with the neighbor. There's not any trees along this easterly boundary line, and the neighbor's driveway is there. We are proposing, although the plan doesn't show it, to put a row of green giant arborvitaes, probably along Granite Springs as well as the neighboring driveway. We are raising the grade slightly to provide positive drainage around the building, so that it'll come around this way and as around that way, as opposed to straight down towards the neighbor as it does now. We're fitting in the all the setbacks, and that's about it.
This is the site that has all the trees down already, Mr. Senor?
No, that's across the street.
Not sure about that.
I don't know. I haven't been there since the fall, so I'm not really sure.
Pretty sure.
See why they would have taken the trees down without permission. So. The builder is a long time Yorktown resident and builder, so I'm sure he knows what the regulations are, and he wouldn't have taken trees down if he didn't have permission, but couldn't say to the fact.
Got it.
So is this another site we have to take a look at then?
What's your tree mitigation, Gabe?
Like I said, we're gonna put some screening along both Granite Springs and along the neighboring driveway there. We're not taking down the trees along the division line to the existing house that's on the next lot.
And the screening is going to be green arborvitae?
Green giant arborvitae.
Green giant.
They don't. They grow fast and they don't spread overly wide. As far as the backyard is concerned, we have a short backyard in here, and so we're trying to preserve space.
And so we don't know how many of those you're putting in yet.
Well, they're going to be generally they're on a 8-foot on center, but the plan doesn't show.
You thinking about anything else, John?
No, I just wanted to get a handle on what the mitigation plan was.
Should we have Dan go out and take a look at this one too if he's out in the field? John,
he's gonna go right by it, so yeah, that's a good idea.
All right. Yeah, he'll be out there already. Dan, can you check to see if there was any trees removed from this site?
Yeah, not a problem. As John said, yeah, I got to drive by it anyway to look at the previous one, so we'll check it out.
All right, past that, do you have any issues with the site?
No wetlands on this one, right? I can't really read it.
No wetland, no wetland.
Yeah, just a little easier than the one across the street that you had to deal with, right?
Yeah.
All right, so if Dan goes out and there's no violations, are we all right as the same application prior? Letter to the board?
We already been to the town board on this for the stormwater plan.
Well, I sent that to us as a referral.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, all right.
We have to answer back.
Okay.
All right, anything else?
No.
All right, Dan, thank you very much for being on this meeting. I think it's going to be a great help moving forward as part of the Team Yorktown group we got here.
Looking forward to working together.
Yes, very nice.
No, it was really great catching up again, getting a handle on what's going on. So the best way to do it is to be a part of these meetings.
No, I agree 100%. Really, it helps the flow of the projects go through, just like the last two applications. All right.
My, as I say, my reservation is always. I remember the guy on Brookside or whatever that street was, and it was annoying to me that he was speaking out in his defense that he was, putting in solar panels to offset the thermal load and all this other stuff, and and then he expected everybody to say hooray, good job. So I think we have to be fair if we're going to be taking a look at what people do before they have permission. That's the only thing. I'm all for people being able to use their property. I didn't want to say it when Mr. Collier was on, and maybe he's still listening because I didn't want to seem like I was defending myself. But I'm all for property rights, and my record speaks to that over and over again. But I think we have to be careful lest we get into a situation where somebody says, "How come me and not them?" and blah blah blah.
We have to be consistent.
Am I finished?
Yeah, you're
all
set.
good.
All right.
You're always good. Yeah.
I wasn't sure. All right. Good night. Have
Thanks,
a good
Elliot.
night.
All right.
All right,
Good
so
night.
we'll move forward. Tom will yell at me if I don't announce that our next meeting is April 12th. And he told me to say good night to everybody. And we almost hit our deadline, Robin.
Oh, boy.
It came close again.
We got 15 minutes left. Let's
Should we
Let's
burn
talk
it?
about something so Nancy has to
Vote to
take the
close the
minute.
meeting.
Huh?
Vote to close the meeting.
They don't want to close the meeting yet, Robin. They want to
I'll
close
make a
the
motion that
meeting.
we close the
I
meeting.
move to close.
There you go.
I yield
Second.
my 15 minutes.
I'll
All right,
second.
we had a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Be safe.
Right.